Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the Occult Exploration Society Live. I'm your host, Snappy, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, Dion. How's it going, Dion?
Life is beautiful.
And we are joined today by our special guests, Ryan Seven. How's it going, Ryan?
Life is beautiful.
And how's it going,
Dion.
Neil, Gnostic Informant?
Hail Satan, let's go.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. So before we get into things, we do want to address a little bit of drama that has come up recently between our friend groups. As many people know, Neil and Dr. Ammon are close friends of ours, and a lot of people have been talking on our Discord, Myth and Lore, and have been posting in our comment sections asking if there's a feud or a disagreement going on between you and Ammon. They'd like some clarification. Several people saw your live stream where you were talking about the origins of the Septuagint, and they saw you making some jokes where you were whipping like Dr. Ammon. Anyway, people are thinking that there is more going on than I think actually is. And as far as I understand, this is an academic disagreement. This is nothing personal. This is about understanding the sources in the history. Do you want to talk about that?
And by the way, if there is anything personal, it's only between me and him, and it's not public. People who air out personal disagreements make me sick, to be honest. And there's people who try to get close with Ammon. I've known Ammon for like almost 3 years now, I think 2.5 years now, and I've seen people try to get close with Ammon to the point where they want him to be his cult leader. And then if he doesn't, and then if he gets a little weirded out and then pulls away, all of a sudden they're like Ali and Ariel and the occult whatever examiner. All of a sudden they're actually the ones in the cult trying to like cancel Ammon. So I want to actually, before I even discuss what happened, just want to defend Ammon against the people like that. It's all nonsense. It's all people who are obsessed with his success and they want to be latch onto it. And Ammon deserves all the success and he deserves all the credit. Now, just to give you my little rundown, I've always supported Ammon. I promoted his channel from day one. The first time anyone's even heard about his channel was on my channel. When I promoted the channel, he had 3 subs. Now he's got tens of thousands, and I hope he continues. I love seeing that he gets 1,000 people watching when he goes live. I love it. But I don't agree with everything Ammon says. I think, to me, this is a little dig I'll just put out there, but I'm not going to get into it. I think he's got a lot of flatterers around him right now who are waving the flames and trying to make it a fire, because I disagree with him on certain things like the Septuagint. I don't care if it was a translation or if it was original. There probably are parts of the Bible that came from Greek. There probably are parts of the Bible that came from Hebrew sources. I don't really care about that at all. It's language to me is the secondary. I care about when and who is writing it. That's what I care about. So I didn't disagree with Ammon because I was pressured by academics. I disagreed because I feel based on my research, that's what I think. I'm being completely honest. So there are people who want to say, Ammon, he's shitting on your work. He's shitting on your work. And I never was trying to do that. I've always defended Ammon. I'm on blacklist now from certain scholars who won't talk to me anymore because of the things I defended Ammon with Dan McClellan and other areas. And I don't regret that at all. Ammon is Ammon, and he's got his ways of doing things. I think he's a little dogmatic on some things, but he's passionate, so he has every right to be like that. But everything that you've seen on that stream, as far as me doing the whipping, and I'm joking around and I'm disagreeing with him on the text, but I don't think him as a person deserves to be discredited in any way. So going forward, I probably won't even. You probably never hear me talk about Ammon unless we're friends. So that's the end of it for me. I wanted to do that stream not to dig at Ammon, but it was really bothering me that people thought that I was only siding with the consensus because I was pressured, and I would never do that. That's the last. People who think that just don't know me, because I constantly go against the consensus on things that I think are not true. That's the whole point of my channel.
Absolutely.
So that's that.
No, Neil, that's very true. And you do deserve the credit for that, right? That's the image and the brand that you've built. You know, you follow your reason and you follow the sources where they lead you. And we can trust you to do that, you know, and an academic disagreement is that it's an academic disagreement. And it's one that can be settled with sources and more understanding. So I hope that you guys both continue to hash this out. But
And one more,
do some cool videos, you know.
I would love to see that happen. I will see. And his response, well, people said it was a response. I don't really know if it was, but it was great. It made some good points about Adam, the name Adam. There's probably something I've always brought this up, that the name Adam might have something to do with Adamus in the Samothracian mysteries, Ewa, and the splitting of Adam and Eve seems to have a Hellenistic precedent over it, and I think he's right about that. So I think we should take one book at a time and not just think the whole Bible was written by one person that was sitting down at one time during one language. That's all. So anyways, I think it's cool. Yeah, that's it.
Everything's cool. Thanks, Neil, for addressing that. That's amazing. But today we're going to get into some dragon tongue. We're back for part 4 of our series. Dion, do you want to talk about where we've been, where we're going?
Well, we had a fantastic presentation last week by Ryan, getting into ley lines, energetic points in our body, how it moves like a serpentine energy. And this can be connected to what we call the dragon or dragon symbolism. How dragons could be keepers of knowledge. These are people. They could be also mythical animals. And the dragon tongue is a form of mythical language, communication, poetry, let's say. You know, so we're exploring nonverbal communication, forms of symbolic communication. You know, what's an ancient dragon? What does it mean to you?
Right. Yeah, we did. We had that amazing presentation from Ryan. And one of the real big takeaways from your presentation, Ryan, was just that dual nature of humanity, right? We kept seeing those images of the half snake, half person, and all of those mythologies about slaying the dragon and overcoming the dragon. And one of the mythopoetic images here is clearly about overcoming the base animalistic tendencies, right?
Absolutely. There's a storehouse of energy there that normally gets put into these animalistic urges that we have, and that when you save those and repurpose them, wonderful things can happen, especially because these are internal energies and internal things happen, mystical things.
By the way, I brought some, when we get to it, I brought some sources on the possession by Bacchus in the theater, and like why Bacchus is the reanimation spirit. I mean, that takes people over, whether it be philosophy or acting or music. There is some sort of divine inspiration or madness that takes over someone when they become really inspired and they create stuff that influences other people. There's something about that is truly whatever you want to call it, divine or magic, whatever you want to call it. But that's the one thing that I think anyone can point to and say, this right here is what makes life enjoyable. It's what makes the human spirit special among like the living animals on the planet. Is the thing is how we can inspire and perform. It's like once you wrap your head around it and it hits you, you're like, dude, this is something special that humans have.
One of the thoughts I had was that this is a charge of energy. You could call it a peak experience. For anybody that's been out on stage, you know what that feels like. There is something extra that happens inside you, you know, chemically, however you want to see it. But this supreme charge of energy, like that lightning from the clouds, from Zeus, is something special. And it's that resurrection energy, as Neil just said. It's this ability to encapsulate and make a charge and then release the charge. And that seems to be the power of the dragon. And that is it's that sloughing of the skin of the serpent. It's this main mystical power of the dragon that you get to revivify and recharge yourself with this life force energy, which is the dragon, which is the lightning.
Also, we have to think about this through those images of the poles and as well as through this alchemical process of transformation, right? The dragon is that monster, and a person can become that monstrous self. And when you become and you embody that monster, you gain all of this power, right? But also in that alchemical performance, when you go one direction, you beget the other direction. In the lowest pits, right? That dragon is also the sun, right? That snake with the poison also is giving you the Amrit, the elixir of life, right? And this is part and parcel of this dragon iconography, is this duality of the form. It is both the most evil and the most transcendent, the most debased and the highest. And it is through slaying the dragon, through this confrontation with this other, this monstrous self, that we can ascend to that highest point. We can find that middle path and go down that Helios road, you know?
If we remember from last week, the slaying the dragon became the riding the donkey. And I think because obviously slaying the dragon, you've killed the dragon, you've actually destroyed something there. I'm one for saying ride the dragon. You've got to try and tame that dragon and utilize it. So slaying's all good because they saw it as pulling apart the pieces and reconstituting them into the world. Fine. But it's a bit vicious for these days. So I think riding the dragon, not chasing the dragon. Don't chase that dragon.
We still do see that poetic image of riding the dragon. Look at Medea, right? She rides the chariot of Helios and has the dracones, the twin dragons, as her riders. And they talk about this explicitly because these are two very important mythopoetic images: the whip, which we've done several episodes on, and the reins.
Oh, and guess who else? Guess who else rides like that? Lucifer. In Ovid's Metamorphosis, he portrays Lucifer as riding on a chariot with a whip and carried by, I don't think he even says what it is, presumably dragons, probably.
Dragons, sometimes they're lions, right? The
Lion,
great
some sort of animal.
Chariot of lions, right?
Yeah.
So you keep seeing the monster is what's important, that animalistic, monstrous other.
And by the way, that's Lucifer as a god, not just an epithet of other gods. So it's like Lucifer could be a mask in a theater sense, where certain gods like Diana or Artemis put on the Lucifera mask and they become Lucifer, which is that tragic theater type of Dionysian style morphing and stuff.
Absolutely. This is what you see with the divine epithets, right? Where you can get, Hecate phosphorus, embodying that light energy. But to take this back to the dragon stuff, who also is that horse rider, right? Or that the riding of the chariot. Sabazios, Serapis, the dragon itself, right? When we were talking in my presentation, we were going through the PGM and we were looking for specifically this serpentine magic and becoming the dragon. We looked at that Typhon spell. We looked at the spell to Apollo. And then we started talking about these agathodaimons, these dragon spirits, in the Abraxas spirit in those gems there with trying to remember so many weird Egyptian names, but all of these phylacteries that we were looking at. I'm actually going to be continuing on with that presentation today. And for my part of the stream, I'm going to be looking into more of these demonic spirits, these spirits that are utilized in magic, these agathodaimons or these Lares and their connections to the snake. So that should get pretty interesting. Dion, you also have a presentation for us. What's your presentation today going to be?
Well, last week you had a quote from the Nonus dealing with Zeus doing something to his hair. And it's called The Ornament of Bacchus. And that's the title that I put on the episode there. And my presentation is what happens when we channel that snake energy, that serpentine energy up our spine, coils and goes to the top chakra, let's say. And it comes out and becomes our hair. A magic power, a sixth sense. You know about Samson and Delilah, the cutting of the hair. And so I'll get into a whole thing and I'll show you how this is related to serpents and dragon hair and Dionysic energy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. So we could hit the first pick whenever you're ready.
Here we go. Let's bring it up.
start with the old Etruscan, the Etruscan little bronze statue.
Those spearheads or leaves? Do you know?
That's his hair. His hair is done up a certain way.
Interesting.
And that's part of it. What we're going to be exploring is doing up your hair, like snake style. We know about Medusa had snake hair. And Medea and the Toxicon and Amazons would play around with their hair, had energy, poisons in it.
Plates, right? They call them plates or sometimes locks.
And that's the word. That's what we're going to explore. So go to the next pic. All right, we got some words right here. You know, I suck. Maybe somebody could say these words for me.
Come on.
Go ahead.
Bostiurikos. That's in English. You can read that at the bottom.
Oschophoria. Oschophoria.
Yeah, Oschophoria, Bostrikos, and Eupokomai. Now, these deal with hair. And so the one at the bottom is a Dionysian ceremony, the first vintage of the year. And it has some special rituals. Because we know there's different Dionysian ceremonies. This is the first one of the year. It deals with vinting wine. And the Bostrikos deals with locks. He said locks of hair or curls of hair. One of the definitions of it is cure of lack of hair, meaning maybe like an abundance of hair. And the word at the top is a word that is used even by Homer and different people. It deals with braids or shining hair or beautiful hair. And so let's go to the next pic and we'll break this down. So last week you had a quote, and it was from Zeus. And I think he was getting ready to go to the bedchamber, and when he's gonna make Dionysus. And the quote says, again, as a young bridegroom bound his hair with coiling snakes and vine leaves intertwined and twisted purple ivy about his locks, the plaited ornament of Bacchus. So I want you to think about the Gorgon and Medusa, snakes in her hair. And then right here, we have snakes in her hair is in terms of Dionysus. At the beginning of Dionysus, where it begins with Zeus. Zeus as Dionysus or Bacchus with the snakes in the hair, the Medusa hair at that.
It's important to recognize, right? Like this quote in the Dionysiaca comes, like you said, right? Zeus is about to have relations with Semele and then create Bacchus. This is where he sets her ablaze and has to then take her in his thigh, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is a really important thing, the taking in the thigh, because this is an allusion to gay sex, because most homosexual sex in ancient Rome was in the thigh. You know, it was thigh sex. They weren't doing penetrative sex, really, you know? So there's all these weird illusions going on.
Wow. Well, you know, and it gets even deeper because we know that once he was born, Hermes becomes like, it's not a nursemaid, a nurse father. Where Hermes takes care of the baby. And here you can see some pictures with Hermes having the locks in his hair. You can see it on the left and on the right. If you see Hermes' hair, he has the staff there, but there's those locks, and these locks are special that we're going to see. So go to the next image. And so we were talking about Oschophoria, first vintage festival of Dionysus, and it was a special festival. It was to Dionysus, Demeter, Ariadne, Athena, and Apollo. And what was special about it is they would take two young nobles, two young men, boys from noble families that were beautiful, and they would dress them up as girls. And they put locks in their hair, they're called the postricos. And they would perfume their hair and put oils and incense in their hairs. And the older boys, it was a coming of age ritual to Apollo. Go to the next image and see, but before you go, you can see that's Dionysus right there. See Dionysus' hair? It has the locks. Like his father said on the wedding night, you know, to betroth, to make him. So go to the next image. So right there, what would happen is the boys would come of age, and what you would do is you would cut your hair to Apollo. And so they would cut their hair, and here's an old stela that shows that ritual. And the boys would do foot races, you know, before they would do that procession with the two young boys dressed up as girls. Now, the chants they would do is these two chants, Eleeu and Io Io, or Io Io. You know, I'm not saying it correctly.
Iwa, yeah.
Yeah, Iwa Iwa and Eleeu. Or some people say that's where we get hallelujah from. And these chants they would do. Pliny talks about it, Plutarch, and the word is the bostrikos, because they would do that to the boy's hair. They would knot it, and they would braid it and put perfumes in it, or twisted oiled tresses. So let's go to the next image. And we're going to explore the different gods in that ceremony. So I showed you Zeus's hair, showed you Hermes' hair that takes care of Dionysus, Dionysus' hair, tressed up. Now here's Apollo. That's Apollo's hair. Most people pay attention to Apollo's deeds and actions, but look at his hair in these statues. And some people call it the Apollo knot. That's his chair in the bottom corner, his throne with snakes on it. It deals with snakes, the story. Because in the next episode is when we're going to get into dragon thrones in China and Pendragons and all that kind of stuff. But for now, we're getting to the dragon's hair. And part of Apollo's hair, it's luke, or shiny, bright, it's long. And he would tress it out and oil it up and put it in these locks in this certain Apollo knot, it's called. You know, and like I said, the older boys in the Oschophoria would do foot races to Apollo. You know, and there's some myths like one of Apollo's sons, Lamus, he's fed with honey by snakes, because we're going to talk about that later too. And if you remember the story where Apollo's playing discus with his lover and it kills him, Hyacinth.
Yeah.
And he becomes a flower.
Kills him.
Yeah. Blows the discus to hit him. You know, and he turns him into a flower. And some people call this the hyacinthine hair. And it'll come in other myths later, because the hair looks tight and purple like a lock, like a curled tress that's purple and tight. And even go to the next image. When you're a narcissist, you know the story of him, where he's beautified by his image. One of the gods curse him, so he falls in love with this image, and he just stares at it in water. And look, you can see in this image, the hair is all oiled up and tressed up. He has those certain locks that we're looking at today. We're exploring this, these braids, the snake hair, the dragon hair, and how this is part of the imagery. So that was Apollo. Continuing, go to the next image. So we have Ariadne, which is one of Dionysus's lovers. Right there, he takes her as his consort. You know, and that's a sad story, that one too. And she's associated with snakes and mushrooms. Here you can see in this old vase, her hair is tressed up and oiled up. That's part of the myth. And his hair is done up too. Remember, she was the Minotaur's half-sister at the labyrinth.
She teaches Theseus how to slay the Minotaur and how to escape. And it's very similar to Medea, right? There's this, he promises to marry her and to make her his queen. And then what does he do? He dumps her on an island and leaves her to die. And then Dionysus comes and takes her to the stars with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know,
first
it's weird.
She had to be abused and abandoned by Theseus.
Well, she's offered extra honey. More honey than all the gods combined in the myth. You know, and part of the story with Theseus, it deals with the Oschophoria. That's why they dress up the two little boys as women, because it deals with the 7 women that are part of the thing with Theseus as the offering. And what happens when Theseus comes back, he forgets to put up the white sail to tell his father, the king, that he's home. His father's, oh, my son's dead, and jumps off the cliff. That's part of the Oschophoria, deals with that whole ceremony. And Theseus is one of the hidden elements of it, why they worship Ariadne in it. And so even in Homer, his Iliad, and there's this, what's it, Karoli Kareni, one of those translators. I bet Neil's probably got a lot of those books.
Yeah, I have all, yeah.
Translates Ariadne of the beautiful braids of hair. That's part of her epitaph, is her hair is braided up and looks beautiful. And that's that word, that euplokamoi, an epitaph that Homer uses a lot for the goddesses with beautiful braids, or ringlets anointed with perfumed oils. So, or sometimes it's like shiny, gleaming hair. So we still got more people that are celebrated at the Oschophoria. Go to the next image. And that's one of the terms right there. It's to make like a wasp, to pinch into in at the waist and to bind tight. It's, the skifu, the sifku, however you say it, is part of the term what they do to the hair. And that snake
really
hair.
are dreading it, basically.
Yeah. There was in your hair determined your status in Greek culture as well. And so go to the next image. And so
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's all
I
right. It's
lost
all right.
one.
And what it was, that was going to be dealing with Demeter, Demeter, who's worshipped at the ceremony, but she's worshipped under it's called Melania. She's the black one
Yeah, the
because
black
she wears
person.
all black.
Morning.
What's the author? Pausanias, if I'm saying it right.
Pausanias, yeah.
Pausanias.
Pausanias, yeah. He talks about there's a cave where she has hair like a horse with snakes,
Oh wow.
and it deals with air god, and it's a weird thing. So here though is her daughter, because remember, and this all deals with the Oschophoria Festival and braiding of hair and Dionysus. Now here
This
we have
is the
Corey. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is Corey's hair
Wow.
on some of the famous statues. Her hair is a certain way.
Is it supposed to be wheat? I got a wheat impression from the
We
young
love it. We
lads
love
that
it.
had
We
the
love it. We
snip
love it. We love it. You know, there's illusions. Remember what happens to wheat when it funguses up? It turns what? Purple.
top.
And we get that air god. So let's go to the next image. And so the one on the right is a kuros. That's a young naked boy. And the one on the left is one of their hairstyles, oiled up tresses. Now the boys, that's a famous style. They would have these curled locks for the young boys, the kuros, the kori, the kuros. And we're going to talk about the korea later. It'll come in this term of the hair. So we talked about so far those people at the ceremony, you know, because the root of the word barber is Horaeus. It's the same root there, this barber Horaeus. So let's go to the next image. So here we are. You've seen these before, the famous little
The boxers of Manoah. Yeah.
yeah. Look at their hair. It's dreaded up and tressed up, or it's curled up or locked up. Different ways. They had different styles that they did, depending. Because you know, if you leave your hair like that, go to the next image, what'll happen? It'll dread up. And that's from ancient Greece right there. Those are some dreadlocks from Greece right there.
Wow.
Just so you know. So we still got some more gods at the Oschophoria Festival. Go to the next image. Oh, by the way, I threw that in real quick. That's an Orpheus hair. That's a statue of Orpheus with his hair, because Orpheus had some hair stuff too going on.
Wow.
It's just it's in, or actually, this is not Orpheus. This is Odysseus. I'm sorry, Odysseus,
Okay.
because Athena changes his hair from wool to hyacinthine hair. Remember what I talked about Apollo's lover's hair, the hyacinthine hair? Well, Athena does that to Odysseus, and makes him taller. It makes his hair like hyacinthine. It's a special thing. So go to the next image, and here we got that snake robe from Athena. And also look at Athena's hair right there. It has locks as well, because Athena would do her hair as well. And here we have, now this special snake robe is special because there's snakes at the edge of the robes, but as well, there's an aegis on it. Can you see that up there?
Yeah, the face, right?
yeah.
Yeah, that would be a gorgon, so that would be Medusa. So traditionally, that would be a goatskin robe with that little snake head right there. But you got the snakes intertwined along the robe. And it even deals with other myths where, yeah, we'll get into that later. So go to the next one. There's Athena right there, that snake robe. And there's Athena hair on the right. Here's like a little brochet, or a little talisman. Yeah, and you can see she has a snake on her head, and her hair is locked at the bottom in the tresses coming down. And is it Athena that turns Medusa into a gorgon to have snake hair?
I'm not
Didn't
sure.
Wait, what was that?
Athena's the one that curses Medusa to have snake hair.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's where this starts. Athena cursed the Medusa with the snake hair, the locks,
She was because she was a temple guardian. She was one of the virgin temple guardians.
and got raped. And so to punish her for getting raped, I'm going to give you snake hair. I'm going to give you dreadlocks. So let's go to the next image, since we're going fast. Boom, there it is right there. And you can see, not only does she have the gorgons around her waist, or the snakes, the bearded snakes. Remember we were talking about bearded snakes last time?
Right.
And her hair is dreadlocked up. Go to the next image, and this will prove there it is. Here's an image of Medusa with the wings, and her hair is locked up. You could see it right there, her hair.
Wow.
It's in the braids. So maybe Medusa had braids. We're talking, or if we had a real life Medusa, maybe she had real life braids. It's a snake hair. It's a sign of a snake queen, or it's a sign of a title, let's say. Go to the next image. I found this one's a special one. One of these old statues, and it had 7 braids. 7 snake braids. Because we're going to get into 7s later on. There's going to be a lot of 7s coming up, but having 7 braids at that. 7 snakes at the top of your head. So go to the next image. Anahututsi. I found another myth that deals with Cherokee, a Cherokee shaman who's actually Shawnee, kidnapped by the Cherokee, and he kills the Ukenta, which is the famous bearded dragons of North America. And the dragon's poison falls on his head, and he grows a snake off the side of his head. This is the famous Cherokee legend. And we got the images. I'll bring them for next time. But I wanted to posit that or talk about that because right here, this is an image in Canada at the Canada Parliament.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Most people walk in and they think it's Medusa. Because when you walk into a lot of these Capitol buildings, you see Medusas. It's normal. It's part of Greek culture in the law. But in this one, that's Tadadaho.
That's amazing. I didn't even know this.
It's not Medusa. That's Tadadaho at the Canadian Parliament building where all the leaders go.
I've been in this building like 1,000 times.
Yep. And that's a Tadadaho right there. And it's important because we talk about a Tadadaho because he has snakes in his hair. That's the actual title today for Iroquois chiefs.
Yeah.
Is you're a Tadadaho. That means you have snakes in your hair. Then the term meaning he with something wavy or curvy in the hair or crooked in the hair. And the guy who fixes that problem, Hiawatha, the shaman, his name means he who combs it out of your hair.
Yeah.
And this is important because when we talk about names, we just think of like George or Bill or Jason. But in ancient times, if you said Tadadaho, they would say, oh, he with snakes in his hair. If we said Aphrodite, you would say, oh, she of the foam, the woman born of foam. See, because we're not looking at it in terms of their symbolic names, what the names mean. When we look at the gods, we just say their names. But in Native American lineage, when you say the name, you get an image of their symbolic meaning of who they are as a person, the name that's given to them. And that'll help you unfold all the other myths if you treat these Greek gods by what their names mean. That's half of it, the etymology of their name. So let's go to the next image. So that's Tadadaho right there with the snakes in his hair. And that's part of the myth. They combed the snakes out of his hair. He became the peace leader, first democracy in America right there. And he went around to the other tribes. And it's a story that it starts off with cannibalism. And the story is almost like Narcissus. How do you say his name?
Narcissus.
Narcissus.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. He's staring in the water at his beautiful image. Well, Hiawatha starts off as a cannibal that on the top of his house is Dekanawida, who's very beautiful, but has speaking problems and is looking down into a pool of water or the pot that he's about to boil some cannibals, some humans. And he sees that image, and that's what pacifies him, that beautiful image in the water and the hairdo and the whole thing. So let's go to the next image.
Yeah, there's also, I just want to bring up that because there is that Jiganose, the great virgin, who is able to tame Tadadaho, because Tadadaho also has all this weird magic associated with the snakes. They say he has the power to kill from afar, makes you think of Apollo and Hecate, the far shooters, and he actually kills 3 of Hiawatha's daughters. Because each time he goes and tries to convince him to give up their fight and join the Confederacy, he kills one of his daughters from afar, but he can't blame him. And then until finally Jiganase goes and manages to convince him to look into the pool. But the young virgin girl has to go and do it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they say there's 3 great peace, like to bring about the great peace, you have the great peacemaker himself, you have Hiawatha, and then you have Jiganase. Jiganase is her name.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But yeah, sorry.
No, all good. Now, the idea of the snakes in the hair right here. These are Mayan images with these dreadlock and snake hair, because we've heard of Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan, the plumed serpent, the serpent with wings. And this all deals all with mathematics too, in keeping time with astrotheology. They get into this heavy. But go to the next image. Right there, the plumed serpent. On the right, you could see how they do up their hair and put herbs in it, leaves and snakes and stuff. And the one on the left is an actual serpent with feathers around it, plumed. Like the basilisk. We talked about that image too, of like a serpent with a plume on it. And in other myths, Quetzalcoatl has a beard. They even put that in the 15th century codexes or whatever. When they went over there to take over, the Spanish monks wrote that Quetzalcoatl had a beard. He had a long white beard. But what they say, it's more Luque, and that he had long white locks that came down and covered his face, because we're going to get into that later. So go to the next image. All right, there's Quetzalcoatl right there. And he's not necessarily a snake. He's a man with plumes coming off the hair right there, and he's killing the snake, or the snake is eating somebody. Or in some images, the snake, a person is inside the snake as a symbol of going through time. But go to the next image. Boom. So the one on the left and the one on the right, that's Shiva on the right, doing the dance in the ring of fire, in the hair, the serpents. Look at the one on the left. He's holding the two snakes, and the hair's coming off, or the things. They look a lot alike, and they got this thing on their head. And we'll get more into that, the power of the dragon's hair. So go to the next image.
I mean,
Right
sorry,
there,
can I
that's
just
the word.
interject that? I just want people to notice how much of a link there is between these American myths, South or North American ancient myths, and Proto-Indo-European myths. In fact, they used the swastika and only got rid of it after they were asked to after World War II. So that, again, is a symbol of the pole and all these myths. And so many of these images, the way they're drawn, what they're doing, the actual symbolism on there is totally the same as early Proto-Indo-European. So you've got to wonder at what point they crossed that land bridge over to the Americas, and or how much how many people have been over there on boats and such over time and have influenced these cultures.
That's right. And I was just looking at stuff earlier today, because there's people are all talking about the guy's Yeats's book that talks about that he posits that Cherokee is ancient Greek. It's a form of
Wow.
yeah. No, and he got books out about it. And there's a lot of people, even in the Discord, there's lots of videos about it and stuff.
Nice.
It is what it is, because it's just linguistics. Who knows what it is? That's all, like I said, over my head. I'm not trying to argue any of that stuff. Go to the next image. So here we got, all right, Jada Mukuda. It means your hair is dressed up as a crown. And the other term right here is Naga Brahmana, one who has serpents as ornaments. And this deals with Shiva and the gods of India. Now we're going to move into the gods of India and their hair, their snake hair. So go to the next image. There it is right there, Shiva. Snakes in the hair. You can go to India today and see thousands of them with their hair like that, dreaded up, and some with snakes in their hair, talking about snakes, talking about magic powers and stuff. And there's Shiva on the right. He's got a snake around his throat, which we're going to talk about. And we're also going to talk about his earrings, because his earrings are considered two snakes as deities that have magic powers. Dealing with the hair and the earrings as well. And there's Vasuki. I don't know if we talked about Vasuki in the past just a little bit. We've covered
We talked about
Naga.
the churning of the ocean of milk and stuff.
But Shiva's throat, maybe you could talk about how Shiva's throat has poison in it.
So what that happens is, there's this great myth of the churning of the ocean of the milk to create the elixir of immortality, right? The Amrit. And to do this, what they do is they take Vishnu turns into a turtle. They get the tallest mountain, right? Then they get this world snake, Vasuki, and they put the tip of the mountain into the ocean of milk, and they're going to churn it like butter. And they got the snake is being pulled on either end. On one side, you have the Asheras. On the other side, you have the holy Devas, right? And they're all churning. Now, what ends up happening is Vasuki comes up and is going to strike while he is doing this. So Shiva sacrifices himself. He jumps and he gets purposely bit in order to defend everyone. And the poison lodges in his throat and turns his throat blue. And you'll see this in much of the iconography. His name, in many ways, is like the blue-throated, you know? And his skin is covered in those ashes, right? But eventually what has to happen is he has to transmute that poison and then return it to the ocean so that it becomes part of that churn to produce this great potion that will become the Amrit. And in some of the versions, he does this on his own. In other versions, he does this in conjunction with the goddess as Shakti, right? As that absolute power. And through this process of making love, they transmute the poison and it becomes part of the potion.
Mm-hmm. And for some people,
sorry, go on, Dion.
well, I was going to say, because this relates to you, because for some people, they consider that as a mushroom. It deals with mushrooms. And the bluing.
Bruising, right?
Yeah, the bruising. And
bruise all the time.
And that image I showed you where Shiva's dancing in the ring of fire, some people say that's Datura. Now, if we look at Datura and mushrooms and honey, it goes back to Quetzalcoatl as well. They have the same serpent hair in Mexico and in India, and the same entheogenics. When I'm saying Datura and mushrooms, 100%. And it's part of their myths. It's on the statues. The dreaded hair, the mushrooms, the honey, the Datura, the snake. It's all part of a singular imagery. And it deals with number sevens too as well. But let's go to the next image.
Right. Can I just interject though quickly?
Yeah.
So this whole recovering from the poison and actually making it a part of the potion, I'm getting reflections of the Aegis, and perhaps, you know, if the Aegis is a snake skin and obviously has the Gorgon on there as something frightening, is this something like a theriac where all those things that are frightening to you, you put in a potion and they become some kind of a shield for you? This is just something I'm seeing.
I think you're onto something there, because, you know, we're dealing with alchemical magic, and it's always about you induce that extreme of violence to bring that extreme of protection. It just makes sense, right?
Yeah.
That you want the most terrifying image. You want the most destructive force, right? And if you're trying to overcome death, you're going to use death-dealing magic, at least from that early alchemical mindset.
Well, we were talking about it last week, that Halloween, you're putting out those jack-o'-lanterns because they're a frightening thing to frighten away less frightening things. That's the whole idea here. You get it with phylacteries as well, that they are often full of demons. Well, what gets rid of demons? The best of the demons.
Well, this is the thing you always use. If you look, we were talking about all those phylacteries. You get the agathodaimon, the kindly, the good demon. You get the lares, those snakes, which are the kindly good demons of the home or the ancestor spirits. You also get that little troll guy, Bess, or you get Ptaika, which is the child dwarf version of Ptah. And it's always about invoking who's the great creator god. So in that, you're invoking that extreme power of the creator, always the greater energy to overcome and protect you, you know?
So, you know, Beth has dreads. Beth has braids and dreads in his beard.
Right.
Look at the images and you'll see that Beth has a braided beard. But, you know, hit the next image. Right here. So, Toxicon, arrow poison, something to do with hairs and weapons. In Greek literature, Medusa having snake hair, and she could kill you from afar. Well, here you go. This is Chandra Getukar, above Bengal right there. And a lot of people didn't know about this stuff for years. It's a part of Indian history that wasn't very publicized. And so here, what you have on the left is the famous hair. It's like a bronze. Remember that bronze I showed you at the beginning, that Etruscan priest? And somebody asked, like, what's up with their hair?
Is it spears or is it?
It kind of looks like that. Well, here, these are obvious weapons. You see an axe, you see a spear, you see an arrow. 100%. You can't say it's not weapons. And she's a fertility god.
I wake up like that in the morning, just like, bloody axes again.
You know,
Glocks, flipping heck. What have I
That's
been doing
right.
last night to have a Glock in my hair?
weaponized hair. And the one on the left has it. You can see it at the top left. And then she's pulling on her earring, which is like a chakram. You see that? She's pulling the earring off. Go to the next image and you'll see it. Right there. Look at on that one. That statue, she's straight pulling it off. And in her hand, she's holding the chakram.
Oh, interesting.
And
It
she
almost
has
looks like a
braids too.
Nautilus kind of
Yeah.
thing.
And she has dreads too, her little braided locks. That's part of the hairdo. Because it deals not only with Shiva, but with Buddha. And all right, so go to the next image. So this is Queen Soma right there. That's her name, from the land of Cam right there, Cambodia, Angkor Wat.
Queen
And-
Drug.
Yeah, that's her name is Soma, Queen Soma. And she deals with mushrooms. Her bottom half of her body is a snake in the mythology. And her husband's job is to hold her hair, her snake hair.
You know that word soma in Sanskrit is cognate with haoma in Persian,
Yeah.
kukayon in Greek, and gota in Germanic, which means God.
Yeah.
Well, her name comes from Sanskrit culture, Vedantic culture, because this is part of the Vedic culture that people don't even know about. That's where
I think the question is there, though. Did that word for mushroom come first, or did the word for God come first? There's a
Same
real
time.
tension between those two things.
Same time, probably. It was probably the same word.
Yeah, we'll see in a minute. Maybe go to the next image.
Well, when we talk about the soma, right, in the Sanskrit, we can connect it to the moon, right? Or we can connect it to the dew or the sperm, right? So it could even be just as primordial as sperm, right? It's that masculine phallus type imagery. So I think the god may have predated the mushroom. I don't know.
I don't know either. It's that the gods possibly come from noticing the gods possibly comes from mushrooms, as it were.
Right.
Some people say is
I
the
think
power
so.
of language. We learn language through mushrooms.
Yep. Because it rewires your brain to start thinking like more systematic, and then you start like saying like that means this means that. You start thinking like that. It's weird.
Well,
I
psychedelics will
think
do that
things
to you.
get a lot.
not just saying
things
that,
get a lot
that
more
it
meaning.
gets you high, not just saying that it gets you high, it makes you think things. It actually does promote cell growth in your brain.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It will cause if we're doing the drugs that some of these mystery cults were doing. Remember, we found that Scythian priestess with the datura wax in her hair. The serious amount of drugs that these people were doing, they are transforming their entire mindset. Let's be real here.
They were.
So speaking about weaponized hair, we'll go back for a second. Weaponized hair and snake hair, Medea's hair, the Toxicon, the Amazons, Medusa, snake hair. Here you could see the same culture that has weapons in their hair. She's actually touching her hair and braiding it. And in the picture on the left, she's touching it to that ring, to that chakram thing. Let's say here it's a ring. They actually, I have other images of those too, but let's go to the next image. So right there, I want to explain something. So we talked about Manasa Devi before, and I showed you images of her as a woman, as a snake goddess. Her body was half snake. She was born of the Nagas. Well, here's an image of her right there, and she has 7 hoods, and she has 7 tongues. And there's an image on the left that looks like that, but that one on the left is from Mexico, where you have 7 snakes coming out the head. The number 7 and the snakes coming out the head. It is a thing. So go to the next image. And it deals with, here we got it all put together. It's Mukalinda, who was the snake god who protects Buddha. If people know, when Buddha's meditating under the Bodhi tree, a storm comes. So the snake comes that has 7 hoods and protects Buddha for 7 days so he can get enlightenment underneath the Bodhi tree. Now you'll notice that Buddha has a special hairdo. It's locked up. And he has a top knot, even though some people said he had an elongated skull or a bump on his head as well, not just a top knot. Go to the next image. So right there's Buddha's top knot as a mushroom on some statues over there. You got to go to Cambodia to get this stuff. It's over there. They get the good stuff where they mix the old Vedantic Hinduism with the Buddhism. I
have quite a few images of Buddha under the body tree, as the body tree is a mushroom. It's much more common than you'd think.
Oh yeah. So hit the next image.
Damn.
So here is Buddha, some images of Buddha. Here on the one on the right is, what do they call it? The Mahayana. Is that the greater vehicle?
Yeah.
And look, his hair's braided, and he has the Apollo knot. Remember Apollo? I showed you Apollo's weird knot that
Yeah,
he
you
had.
get that bow type thing.
Oh yeah, they definitely-
Buddha got that same thing, and his hair's braided up.
I've been saying for a while that Buddhism, I think, comes from the intermingling with the Greco-Bactrians in the East. They were living in modern day Afghanistan, and the Indians, and they're putting together Dionysian, Apollonian figures into their philosophy, coming up with Buddha. I think the Buddha is a real person, by the way. I think he was inspired by the Bacchus way of life. And by the way, put a footnote what I just said, because I'm going to talk about this when it's my turn.
Love it. No, because that's what we're showing. Because there was a book. Was it Elaine Danilou? This is
Yes.
kind of inspiring that. Like, hey, Elaine, I'm looking at their hair, and their hair is really showing me that there's more connections than people think. Go to one more image. I just got a few more, and we'll drive it home. So, Avalokitesvara. I'm not saying it right.
Yeah, the Bodhisattva of compassion.
Which could be Kuan Yin, could be male or female. So right there, look at the hand sign, first of all. Throwing up one of those little rudras, the hand signs. And Kuan Yin's hair here, or Ava's hair, is locked up in dreadlocks, straight dreadlocks. And hold with the dragon on top, a dragon crown.
Look at this.
Did you know that Kuan Yin is the deity of Chinese alchemy?
Yeah.
What are we looking at, Neil?
So, can you just make it bigger? I'll tell you what it is. See the head that you're just talking about? The hair like
Oh,
that?
Greco-Bactrian Buddha, right?
Yes. This is a Greek influenced statue of the Bodhisattva.
Bodhisattva.
Yeah,
And
that
it's the
wild?
Greco-Bactrian style.
that's the
with
guy
the
we're just
Apollo
talking
top
about.
knot.
This is what I was going to bring this up later anyway. It's crazy that you talked about this. I didn't even
Same
know you were
guy.
talking. I didn't even know you were bringing this up.
How do
So,
we say that name again? Avalokitesvara?
yeah, it's hard to say. And so, but we'll get more into that in the next episode when we get all to the Asian stuff and Pendragons from England and Scythian dragons. But go to the next image. All right. So I got a few more slides, and I'm going to show this in the Bible. This hair thing in the Bible and the dragon stuff. And I'm even going to use what Sir Lancelot Brenton. Do you guys know who that is?
No.
1844 Septuagint.
Septuagint, yeah, okay. I was going to say.
Yeah, that's Sir Lancelot. Oh no, I'd be knowing about his family and everything. Just because if you're all going to make have a hip hop ancient Greek battle on it style of the philosophers, then I want to do my jump in the battle and battle you all too.
He's the guy who took the three major church Old Testament Bibles, Codex Vaticanus, Codex Alexandricus, and Codex Sinaiticus, and he put them together and unified them into the Brenton Septuagint that we all have. I have it right here, actually.
Well, you know, he was a sir. He inherited the title of a baron from his father, and his father was actually born in America.
Is it?
Yeah, it's a weird story, but we're going to get into that later because I just want to put the preface of knowing that I know what source I'm going to and how it was written. And then it makes you wonder where to get all that spicy thinking from in 1844 to put that into his version of it. So here we're going to go with Judges 16:19.
I see what you're going. I see where you're going with that.
And this is Samson. You can see that Samson has kind of dreaded hair, and we know Samson has that famous hair. And in the Septuagint, it says, having lulled him to sleep. Well, even before we go into the story of his hair, remember the time Samson kills the lion? And on the way back, there's honey growing in the lion, hallucinogenic honey. And he takes that honey and he takes it home and gives some to his family. That crazy psychoactive honey that grows on dead animals. But here we go to Judges 16:19. And before this, she does some weird stuff, Delilah, because she wants to know a secret of his powers. And he keeps telling her stories. She ties him up in ropes and like shibari, and he breaks free. And so finally, he says, well, if you tie my hair up a certain way. So she ties his hair up and attaches it to something, and then wakes him up. And when he wakes up, it's supposed to rip off the wall, but it doesn't. That's before she ever cuts his hair. She ties his hair up to a weave, like a spindle. She tries to weave his hair into something onto the wall. Like, remember we talked about the slave when you put the hole in their ear on the wall, Malchus, and that kind of stuff. So, so right here, so what happens having lulled him to sleep between her gonata. It says it.
In her colpos. Okay.
And gonos means it could be, you know what gonos is? It's gynecology. That's your inner parts. Gonata is your knees. But
Gonads. They call it gonads.
Gonads, yeah. If we just changed a couple letters, he's between her legs when he falls asleep doing something. And then what she does is she calls the chorea. Remember the word chorea I showed you? Dealing with the hair, chore and the kurios. Well, she calls the chorea, the barber, which the root of it deals with virgins somehow. And so she comes, and what does he do? He shaves the 7 bostricos. Seven of them. Seven bostricos.
Oh my God.
The bostricos that are in the Oschophoria ceremony with the 2 boys dressed up as girls for Dionysus.
Has anyone else ever? Did you get this from anyone? Did you discover this yourself?
No. We're just the Muse and you guys. I get it from Amen, from you, from Discord. It's the Muse. We're exploring this stuff. So go to the next image. We're going to get into this deeper. So here we have John's hair. You can see it's locked up right there. His hair was supposed to be wild. He's a wild boy up there. He has the techelet right there, that blue, because we know that's that blue right there. That's your purple, because you know mollusks make blue as well. I mean, it's just different color.
This is the perfect example of a human Bacchus, John the Baptist, living out in the wild, eating honey and bugs.
Honey, and bugs.
Dude, that is a Bacchus right there. That is a human Bacchus.
He's eating honey and bugs, and there's even more to it.
And he's bathing, he's doing baptisms and stuff.
Yeah, go to the next image. Check this out. So, remember when Salome cuts his hair, or cuts him, chops his head off because he won't make love to her. She does the dance of the 7 veils, you know, and they cut off John's head, and John gets mad. Here's what happens. There's a book. How do you say his name? Serapion?
Yeah, Serapion.
Yeah.
It's called The Life of John by Serapion. He talks about in it when they bring the head of John on a platter to Mary Salome and Herod. It says, here's what it says. When the wicked woman heard this, she became angry and said to him, I will kill you dead, and I will put the hair from your head into my pillow, and I lie on you with Herod every night, and I will bury your head where I wash myself every time I sleep with them.
Oh my gosh.
That's in the Serapion. But so then what happens? So here's what happens. So they bring her the head then, and here's what happens. Suddenly the head of the blessed John let the locks of his hair loose from the plate, spread them, and flew to the center of the room in front of the king. And at that moment, he started talking. And that's where he flies around, Jerusalem for the next 3 years, talking shit to Herod.
You don't even know how much you're setting up my segment, because the point of being a Bacchus is to be willing to die for the truth and for the love of wisdom. And that's what John does. He's willing to die for this shit. And then if you can do that, you can successfully pull that off, you are immortal. That's why his head comes back up and he looks right at the king.
Yeah, it says the first thing that happens is his locks start flying off his head. Those dreadlock snake hair takes him up, the plumed serpent, and he flies up and he prophesies. Go to the next image.
Well, it's also important that he's flying around, Dion, on something very important.
A charger.
The charger, the Seder plate.
The Aegis shield. That's the Aegis shield. That's the Aegis shield.
Right?
It's putting that.
I mean, I've got to shout out, for me, all these are shamanic motifs. Every time you've seen 7, it's those 7 nerve endings. And when you're getting beyond them, when you're able to spread them out and fly, that's you're off your head. It's an ancient motif. Yeah.
Well,
it's your 7 chakras flying out the top.
But they're also it's also all these dead martyrs are always food at some point. You have to eat them after that. You're eating their words after they die. Like you know what I mean? Jesus' flesh, John the Baptist's head is on a platter, Prometheus's blood, the ichor. You got to eat them after they die.
Yeah, it's that the power is contained within there. We've said that about dragons in drugs. There's a dragon in the drug. You eat the dragon, you gain the power of the dragon.
Right. And this is even encoded in one of the earliest versions of this dragon kind of type story, right? in the original story from Egypt, first you have Seth slay the dragon, and he eats the dragon. And then later Seth slays Osiris, rips him apart. And so Isis goes on her search for Osiris, and through finding all the parts and then consuming them, gives birth to Horus the child, which is Osiris reformed. Then what does Horus do? He goes and kills Set. And what do? They roast him and eat donkey.
Yep.
He
He avenges.
donkey.
He avenges the father in the underworld.
Yeah.
It's slaying the dragon again. It's that same motif.
Yeah.
It's Set being the negative parts of yourself. I mean, in some of the mysteries, they team up and become brothers and help each other. And you see many motifs like that, churning of the world, the snake, same motif, just over like a heart and lungs. But it's the same, it's the spine, isn't it? And you're churning up the spine and getting that cerebrospinal fluid to hit the pineal or whatever it'll be.
Absolutely. You got to open up that eye of Osiris again, right? Which you have in
Of
your
Horus,
brain.
yeah. Yeah, the eye of Horus, yeah. Which is also to do with measurements and things like that, because I think often they're seeing snakes as, and you can see this word related to the god himself, Set, that as with that phylactery Snappy showed last week, that serpent that goes around the outside of the cartoon shields it in, and this becomes a set. All things in the universe are sets of things. We can say there's 3 of those and 4 of those. They're not the ultimate 3 and 4. Those are metaphysical concepts. However, they are sets of 3, sets of 4. Dion is a set of human. Do you get me with all these principles? And that basic division, putting these things into sets, A, makes them evil because they're not whole, but B, makes everything work because you've got the polarities, because it's my set versus your set. I think it's actually a very important conception around this dragon, that it is I called it a line of energy in the last episode, but it's a set of power. It's a set of things.
Absolutely. You're so onto something. And just to back you up and to point it out in the mythopoetic framework here, we're talking about Egypt. If you go to, what is Isis's original name? Not the Greek version, the
Throne.
Egyptian. Aset.
Throne.
Aset, though. Aset and Set.
Yeah.
Right? You have a set, and then you have the lack of set. This is where you're getting to this again. You have that infinitely small point, the whole, the tiniest contained whole, and then you have that absolute forever expansiveness.
Yeah.
Right? And this is what it is. And these 2 forms are originally one form, Set and Aset. And that is that Saturnian god. We see this in the Greek because it's Virgo and Scorpion are originally one sign, but they get split. Yeah. And that's how you get Libra. And this is documented in the myths because Libra is the claws of Scorpio.
Yeah, absolutely true. And I'd just like to say also that serpent that is the world soul, the serpent around the egg, that kind of phanic serpent, that's in the like Gnostic versions of this understanding, that Abraxian energy is also kind of evil as well, because it's partitioned off. Anything that's not the whole has the ability to become evil because it has the ability to go against the whole, as it were. Does that make sense? I'm just making it up as I go along.
No, I get what you're saying, because it keeps making me think of too, like, part of the image is that there is this division, there's this splitting, right? Adam Cadmos, the androgyne, or Phanes, is ripped apart into the masculine and feminine, Eve and Adam, right? And so when you get that split, Aset and Set, this causes the fallout of all creation. And in order to heal creation, you have to invoke what? The taboo. Mother or brother and sister now have to make love in order to recreate the whole. But it's this great sin, right? And we see this repeated again and again and then again, even with the dragon imagery. You have to go to the absolute evil to get to the good. In order to find that power, you have to look where you're not supposed to look. You have to engage in the taboo. And this is that satanic Luciferian image that we're always harping about.
100%. Yeah. Brilliantly put.
Sorry to rant there, Dion. And
All good. All good. Sounds good. Well, I only got a couple more pictures and I'll wrap it up. So we were looking at John's hair, and John's hair taking a role in him flying off the charger plate and flying through the air in the Life of John, that work by Serapion. Here I have a priest of Otis, or Kybele. She has an image of Otis around her neck. Now, when Otis is killed, part of the thing, the gods grant that his hair will grow forever. So his body's dead, but his hair grows forever. And these priests of Kybele were famous. Do you know what color their hair was?
Red or
Black.
what?
No, it was blonde.
Oh, wow.
You know, remember Almond talking about you having to put on the blonde wig or the platinum
Right,
wig?
the platinum wigs. Yes.
Yes.
I remember Neil.
The galley priests had blonde wigs, or they would dye their hair blonde. They bleached their hair. Here's one of the galley priests right there, has the dreadlock hair. You could see special locks. And there's more to this. Go to the next image. You know, and even Muhammad, there's hadiths that talk about he would braid his hair into 4 braids before he'd go around the Kaaba stone in Mecca. And he would also dye his hair, the tips red. Because you've seen sometimes Muslims, the red on the beard.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's part of henna, you know. And so here I want to talk about the relationship between the galley priests, the bleached dreadlocks, and also with Jesus too. And you know, we saw the galley priests, they wear female clothes. These were men who were feminized for the goddess Kybele. Here, Revelation 1:13. And in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, one like unto the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the foot, and about the pap, and girt is the word, girt about the paps with the golden girdle. Your
So
paps are your breast. Yeah, he had a girdle.
Gird is important because that means to bind your breast. One of the
Yeah.
epithets of Hecate is she's ungirded, right? You know, she doesn't wear a bra.
Right. And so it was the 7 candlesticks, because we're at Revelation 1:13. Go to the next one, and I'll get into Revelation 1:14. And this deals with Jesus's hair. And it says his head and his hairs were white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were as a flame of fire. Now, you see 2 words white right there. Well, those are not the 2 same whites. If you look it up in the Septuagint, once again, with Sir Lancelot, he's using Luke and Lucon. And in the first one, the Luke means to bleach. His hair is bleached. Well, if he was going to be a galley priestess and girt to the paps, he would have to bleach his hair. Like Apollo with the Luke hair, the shining bright hair. That's part of it. You know, just showing you there something that deals with
Well,
the
you can
relationship
see
between
this
the galley hair and the Jesus hair.
There's even various tribes that do this with cow urine, where they bleach their hair with the cow urine. You know, their hair will become white, and it's a way also to protect them from bugs and as a repellent and stuff. But there's even claims that some of the Norse were doing this, were bleaching their hair using various things as a part of a sacred rite, you know?
Yeah. So we're going to hit the
I'd like
last
to point
image.
out here that it actually says his head and his hairs. So it's not just his hairs that were bleached or that color, his head.
Yeah. So what's up with that? Because at the bottom part where it says white as snow, that's Lucon. The top part, the white is Luke. Like Sir Lancelot made a differentiation in his
That's why
Septuagint.
that matches him being called Morning Star at the end too.
Yeah. So there's more to this hair stuff and what's going on.
Yeah.
You know. So go to the next image.
The Lucifer mask.
So this is my last image right here. That's Sabazios.
Really?
That's Sabazios, and look at his hair locked up.
Wait. This is what they're saying. This is Sabazios, or you're saying this?
No, they say it is. It's written on the statue.
Whoa.
Look at his hand sign. Look at his hand sign.
Yeah, you're right. I see it now.
He's doing it. Oh my God.
He's got a snake at the bottom there, and his hair is locked up like Apollo in the Apollo knot with the dreadlocks as the ornament of Bacchus. I'll leave it at that. That's all I gotta say. I'll leave it at that. Y'all take over.
That was crazy. That's a Bacchus right there. That's the image of the Bacchus.
The ornament of Bacchus. That's what we're talking about, is that representation of your hair.
Sorry, Dion, finish your thought.
No, I was just going to say, we can see something in his hair tells me a story.
Right.
It just looks like hair to somebody else, but I saw something else.
So can I ask you guys, because I still feel slightly in the dark. what do you see? In a normally layman put way, what are they doing with the hair? Are they storing drugs for their own use? Are they storing these drugs as weapons? Is it both? Is it what?
I think a
In a
lot of the time,
humanistic way. Sorry, dear.
I was going to say a lot of the time it's symbolic.
Yeah,
A
it's
lot of the time it's
costume.
just a hairstyle in ancient times. That's what happens. They didn't brush their hair. The hair had lock up naturally. But it's a symbol of royalty, the symbol of priesthood, of aesthetic lifestyles. It has symbolic values, but I'm trying to show you it has functional value in that the mythology of Medusa and Medea having arrows in their hair is not so theoretical after all. That this is, you got ancient cultures that showing weapons in their hair, weaponized hair.
What I think is that, like, at one point, right, we have too many attestations and too much evidence to deny. At one point, there were these Amazonian women who braided their hair with drug-infused wax that was used to poison arrows. That is certain. That happened. But what I think comes after that is costume and performance. Where does we talked about this in our stream, right? So much of magic is born out of the confrontation with the other, the barbarous, right? And it's about taking that which is different and strange and incorporating it and using it to empower yourself. So these people want to then be snake-like and powerful, so they get dreadlocks. It's like almost like a cultural appropriation, but more so it's about a magical costuming.
Putting on that mask. It's putting on that bonding mask.
Imagine if you came across these warriors with the elongated skulls, the massive ears, and the giant dreadlocks. Those guys are going to look monstrous. They're going to be terrifying as all hell. That stuff is effective. We've just been so we're so out of normal reality with media now that we have a hard time imagining this stuff is scary. But in the ancient world, the scariest thing was a barbarous person with a spear because these people would stick you on a stake. They would poison you. They would eat you, like,
yeah.
And there's nothing more scary than a person, than a crazed man. I'm sorry. There just isn't anything on earth scarier than a person,
Right.
So of course the dragon is a man,
I like it.
But Gnostic, did you want to do your presentation or should I do mine?
Whoever wants to go. I mean, I could go. If you want to, yeah, whatever you want to do. It's your show.
Well,
I'm ready when you are.
Because I wanted to get into a couple of these sources and to talk about what's going on with these snakes and these spirits. So in my last presentation, I was diving deep into the PGM. And I kept finding, when I was trying to figure out what is the purpose of this phylactery, what is going on with all of this magic invoking these gods, it all came about creating that defensive shield, protecting yourself from evil, right? And evil in all of its grandiose forms. But they were also always invoking these demonic spirits, these various demons, and all of these spirits that are connected with these spirits. Where I ended my presentation with you guys, if you remember, is we were talking about Diamuta, the goddess as Diamuta in Rome, where she stands up to Zeus, who's going to rape her sister, one of the nymphs of the Tiber. And by standing up to Zeus and defending his sister and telling Hera, Zeus rips out her tongue and casts her into the swamps. And then she transforms Diamuta into this character called Aka Laurentia. Now, Laurentia, it has a couple of different meanings the scholars debate. One is it comes from Laura, which means the roads, the crossroads in Greek. Another says it comes from larvae, which is the spirits of the undead. Aka Laurentia, though, is also the mother of Romulus and Remus. She is the she-wolf, the prostitute who founds Rome. Mm-hmm. And she's connected to these characters called the Lares. She's called both the mother of Lares and the mother of gods. When you look into what the Lares are so fucking wild and crazy and complicated. Sometimes they're twin men. Sometimes they're one man. Sometimes they're a rooster, a dog, and a snake. But the thing that blew my mind is that they are the most widespread of all of the Egyptian deities. of all the Roman deities.
Yeah.
Every Roman city had shrines to them at every major crossroad, and every house was said to have their own Larry or Lares, right? This is such a common motif, these daimonic spirits, and they seem to be.
Those standards that the Romans carry, those represent the layers that are the spirits of the layers that are with you in battle.
Right? They come everywhere. And what was so wild to me when I started to dig into this and I was looking into what the actual source texts say, the sources can't even agree on what the Lares are or what the Lares do. So this is Arnobius Adversus in his book Gentiles. And
Yeah,
he's
I got that
quoting
right here.
Varro. He's quoting Varro here, right? So he's going as deep as he can. And this is what he has to say. He says, if it seems appropriate, we can also say something in brief about Lares, whom the common people consider the gods of the streets and paths, because in Greek, the streets are called Lauras. In various writings, Nigidius calls them now the guardians of house and home. Then those Curites, who once managed to conceal Jove's wailing and the clashing of their weapons, then the 5 digiti of Samothrace, whom the Greeks tell us are named the Idaean Dactyli. Varro is similarly hesitant, now saying they should be called the Manes, spirits of the kindly dead, which is why Mania is called the mother of Lares. Acalarentia, Diamuta, now Mania. She has so many names. And of course, Tacita. Then again, gods of the air and heroes, now declaring the Lares to be spirits of the restless dead, larvae, following the opinion of ancient writers as if they were sorts of personal protective spirits, genii of the home, and the souls of those who died. So it's like, what are they? Anorbius?
I would say, in my opinion, they're like the Greek daemons. They're just
this is what I wanted to get at.
Yeah. And by the way, this is Arnobius of Sicca. It's called Adversus Gentiles, the name of the book.
Oh, sorry, I screwed that up.
Just yeah.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. But yeah, so wild source that I found there. And they really remind me the Lares of the Ganas in the Shaivite tradition, which are the attendants of Shiva, right? Who is that underworld deity?
Yeah, exactly.
Same thing. And as we know, the Curites and the Idaean Dactyli are the attendants of Dionysus and Zeus, right? And I wanted to get into this. Here's a picture first from Pompeii showing all of the various Larii.
I love this image. By the way, this image shows up in many cities.
Yeah.
So it was like a common family image that would be put on your walls.
But it's so important. When I was reading the source text and they're talking about all these various stuff. So you have the twin serpents, okay? And one of them is bearded. Okay, and one is clearly masculine and one is clearly feminine. All right, and they're both going to this sacred pillar. Then at the top here, you have the 2 twin Lares.
See what they're holding in their hand? The horn of oil for Christing.
Yep, the horn of oil for Christing.
The horn of oil. Yeah.
And then in their hands are these Dionysian buckets that were for getting wine poured, and sometimes they'd pour fruit in with it. And this was at the Dionysian festival. You would have this. Okay.
Those are the Christers.
Yeah. Okay, then
this looks almost the same as that Babylonian image that I showed last week with the 2 Apkallu fish priests stood around the tree. It's always this same polarity stuff. I see what you're getting at, Snappy. I like it.
Right.
And you know what's in that jar? That's where the sacred drugs are. That's where it is.
Absolutely.
You pick out from the chest to get initiated.
Yep. And what's also, though, important here is that we also see, the scholars have confirmed this, there's 2 twin children and a boar, okay? So the Lares is also appearing as these different figures as well. And I didn't show it here, but often you'll see a rooster, a dog as well, right? And the boar and the snake. Those 4 animals representing the 4 quadrants. Very important.
It's the seasons, isn't it? Yeah. So like the boar is often a god killer because the season of the boar comes at the same time as the end of summer. So it's the boar that kills the sun.
Exactly. You see it clearly, right? And also the boar is this huge image with the Lares because the boar is representative of the mother. The pig gives birth to sometimes upwards of 20 offspring. And they used to, at this festival called the Compitana, They would sacrifice a boar and they would share it freely among everyone at the crossroads. And these are not standard crossroads that we understand. Sometimes you would have like 7 roads meeting. These would be the center of your city, right? Where you would also have your people shouting the news and stuff. So right at the center of your most important places, they'd have these shrines that would also be like places of feasting and worship, right? Where everyone was expected to partake, you know? And it was one of the few places in Rome where all of the various classes would actually confront each other, is at these shrines at the crossroads. Because most of the time they would not, unless you wouldn't get near a noble unless you were the slave of a noble, you know, if you were a lower person. Here's an image I wanted to show. All these people in the background who are naked, these are the Curites, and this is Athena, but that was the only picture I could find. I wanted to talk about this. Or sorry, they weren't. They were the dactyli. These are the only image I could find.
Oh, Strabo equates the dactyli with the Corites.
The Curites, right?
So they're Cretan, and then there's Phrygian, the Cretan ones. But like they're
and Samothracian ones. That's what Anorbius was also doing.
Yeah,
he's equating them all. The only thing I'm also going to add in is the Lares. The Lares are also part of this.
Oh, and by the way, as far as the Lares goes, those little boy priests of Mars, I forgot what they're called right now, Salii. They would dance naked with just a shield. I think there was 12 of them or something. It's 12 of them, and they would they're imitating the Corites and the dactyli. That's what they're doing. They're getting these rites from the east, from these Cretan people, and these priests of Mars are imitating them. Absolutely. That was the whole point.
Yeah, because the mother Acca Laurentia is said to have 12 kids, and then Romulus kills Remus to join in and to finish off the 12. He's somehow special, and she adopts him. But those are the 12, and then it's her money. She becomes the first bank of Rome.
I just found it.
Gets all wild. Here, I'll pull it up.
Just real quick, just to show people what I'm talking about. The Salii, leaping priest of Mars, right? 12 patrician youths dressed as archaic warriors with a sword, a spiked headdress. Holy shit. We not even noticed that till just now.
Just like that Etruscan god.
Yeah. And so they would dance and they would pretty much pretend to be these Curites. But anyways,
the Curites, yeah.
I just wanted to show you that.
That's awesome. I love it. All right. So now I wanted to read to you. This is a quote from Apollonius of Rhodes, the Argonautica. And it says, when Anchialae knew her time of delivery was come, she went to the Idaean cave on Mount Ida, or alternatively, Psychro cave on the Lasthi plateau. As she squatted in labor, she dug her fingers into the earth, which brought forth the dactyloi Idaeoi, the Idaean fingers, thus often 10 in number or sometimes multiplied into a race of 10 times 10. 3 is just as often given as their number. They are sometimes instead numbered as 33. So when I dug into this, a lot of scholars talk about how you have the original Idaean dactyli, or the dactyli, then they all have these descendants, right? It's like it's this cause of generation. They create an entire new race. This becomes the Cretan people, right? And they come out of these fingers. And it's really about this descent of generation that gets ever expansive, you know? And I wanted to just connect, you know, showing us this image of digging into the earth to give birth to these demons, basically, these daimones, right? And now I wanted to read for us, this is from Ovid's Fausti, talking about the Curites as well as the Lares again. So it says, the 1st of May saw an altar in small images set up in honor of the guardian Lares, that men from Curies had vowed them. But the passage of time destroyed many things. Long old age hurt even stone. The reason for giving them is this. nickname was because they guard everything in safety under their gaze. They are guardian spirits like dragons, right? The Lares guard everything under their gaze. They also stand before us and they are in charge of the walls of the city, right? They're the children of the mother and they protect the walls of the city. And they are present and bring help. But a dog made of the same stone used to stand before their feet. What was the reason it was standing with the Lar? Each looks after the home. Each is also faithful to the master. Crossroads are dear to the god. Crossroads are dear to the dog. Both the Lar and the hounds of Diana drive away thieves. Lares keep watch at night. Dogs keep watch at night. I was searching for the two images of the twin gods fallen to ruin by the force of the years in passing. The city has 1,000 Lares and the guardian spirits, genius of the leader who handed them over, and the streets cultivate the three deities. So what's important here is that the dogs of Diana are also considered Lares, according to Ovid. And we know that the dogs of Diana, right, are these virgin priestesses. And we also know that they're related to Hecate. They are the daughters of Hecate. They're these virgins that Hecate saves, right? Just as we see in that Euripides play, Iphigenia at Troy, right? Where Artemis has Hecate intervene and take Iphigenia and transport her to the temple of Artemis, you know? And we even showed you in a previous episode where young girls who would die a violent death protecting something would often be turned into Hecate, you know, and become one of these dogs of Artemis. So wild connection here with all these demonic figures. And then I wanted to read for you, this is a really interesting passage. It comes from the Aeneid. And this is when Aeneas first sees a Lary. But you got to remember is that Aeneas is not Roman. So when he sees this spirit, he doesn't know that it's a good, welcoming spirit. He's kind of caught off guard because he's a foreigner, right? From Troy. He had spoken these words when from the foot of the shrine, a huge slippery snake trailed 7 coils and 7 folds, peacefully circling the grave mound and gliding among the altars, his back dappled with blue markings and his scales ablaze with the sheen of gold. As in the clouds, the rainbow reveals 1,000 shifting colors in the sunlight. He has the entire color of the rainbow on him. Aeneas was shocked at the sight. At last, sliding with his long body between the bowls and polished cups, the serpent tasted the feast, and again, all harmless, crept away beneath the tomb, leaving the altars where he had fled. More eagerly, therefore, he, Aeneas, renews his father's interrupted rites, not knowing whether to think the snake was the genius of the place or at the service of his parent. So he knows it's a demon, a daimones, but he doesn't know where it's coming from. And I wanted to show you, this is a recreation of a painting that was apparently originally hung at Herculaneum. And it's of the god Harpocrates with a snake. And it's on one of these pillars that we see in all of those Lary paintings, right? Where they would put the food offerings and the drugs that they would give to the Lares. And Harpocrates is in charge. He is kind of like the master of the Lares, which is so interesting. And Harpocrates is that god of silence, Horus the child. And this takes us back to our phylacteries, into our dragon stuff again, because all of that dragon magic kept having to do with this Harpocrates figure. And we see it with that Ptah figure or the Ptaika, right? All of these gems, all of these protecting spirits that call forth this similar energy, right?
And
so
did you see his hair? Actually, I zoomed in on it, and he got the locks in the front, the little snake locks right there.
Absolutely. Yeah. He's got the
And
crazy
I'd like
snake hair.
Is that holly in front of his genitals there?
It could be. I'm not sure.
Not holly. I meant olive. Sorry, not holly.
Olive.
That's
I'm not sure.
European, yeah.
I'm not sure what he has.
Because I was looking into Harpocrates this week after we discussed him last week, like on what the esotericists think of him, and that silence seems to be a bodily silence, like a calming down and peacefulness of your urges again. And I was thinking that could be olive branch over his genitals, because obviously olive is the twig of peace.
Well, there's so much going on here, because remember, we were talking about the mother of Lares, Acca Laurentia, that nymph Larissa or Laura. Well, she is also said to be Tacita, the silent, Diamuta, the silent. She has her tongue ripped out for challenging Zeus, right?
Yeah.
And she's the mother of Lares, and Harpocrates is somehow connected with all of this, right? He's like this child who's born of this energy from this great mother as well, right? Because she's the mother of gods. So here I wanted to show this really interesting image. This is a amulet, an Egyptian amulet. And here we have the god Ptaika, which is the dwarf version of the creator god Ptah. And this comes from Memphis. And what we see here is he's got a bunch of wild stuff. First, he's got a top knot, Dion. Look at him.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Okay, but it's wild. When they look at this top knot, it's a scarab. It's a scarab connecting him to, remember we talked about last week, the Egyptian Lucifer Khepri, who is the scarab beetle, right? So he has that Luciferian power on his head as a piece of hair. And from the front, it looks like that Apollonian bow. But at the top, it is the scarab when you look down. Okay, wild. He's carrying here 3 snakes. The snakes are biting him in the nipple, and he's grabbing them on the sides of his stomach. Okay, and then
It's also the spiked headdress that the Salii are having. It's almost the same. It's the same style, same shape.
Right? It's the same kind. This thing about bringing the solar energy down to the head is very well attested. Ryan's talked about it a ton.
And you know his feet are crocodiles. He's standing on the Sobek.
He's standing on crocodiles, which is super important, because we're going to see, okay, this is another version of a Ptah, or Ptaika, I should say, phylactery. And this time you can clearly see the scarab at the top, and that he's standing. He's a dwarf too. I wanted this one because you can clearly see he's a dwarf, and he's standing on top of these alligators. Now look at this. This is Horus the child. Okay, what is he doing? He's got the snakes in his hands, as well as 2 dogs. He's standing on 2 crocodiles. He's got the long snake lock, and then he's got Bess on his head, and he has 2 what is the of Horus? What is the bird of Horus? Hawks. He has 2 hawks.
He also has that Sabazian feminine Shiva type of look to him.
Right. The
Remember, Sabazios and Shiva are cognate. They both have that feminine look that you showed earlier.
Yeah. And it's just, there's just so many synchronicities, because if you look at also Ptah on this one, you can see he's got hawks on, not on this one, but in this one, he has hawks on his shoulder, right? Carrying the snakes, standing on alligators with the snake lock, and with that other phylactery dwarf, Bess, right? So even though Horus the child isn't a dwarf, on top of his head is the magic dwarf, So there's some deep connection.
Here, I could say, Bess has the braided beard, and if you go 2 images back, Bess has the braided mustache. Yeah, that one right there. You can see the mustache.
That's actually a snake. That's actually snake that he's biting.
Oh, that he's biting.
Yeah, look into it. And the snake is biting him.
Oh wow.
Oh
yeah.
Oh, it looks like the Fu Manchu.
Right, but no, it's he's biting a snake.
Love it.
So wild. And then I wanted to.
Are you guys? Sorry, just to interject. Are you guys familiar with the Telesphoros, more Roman dwarf deities that look almost exactly like?
Is the Roman Harpocrates? But go ahead.
Yeah, but it just. So I bumped into the Telesphoros from decoding some of Jung's mystical stuff. Carl Jung made these square obelisks. Yeah, and in the center is Telesphoros, and I was reading it. I'm like, this sounds like shamanic mushroom stuff. And sure enough, you look at the Telesphoros, and they just look like little dwarf mushroom guys, almost exactly. A little bit phallic, but mushrooms essentially.
But
And
again, though, he's another one of these dwarf figures. No, and dwarves are always associated with mushrooms. Always.
Well, I think it's because, as with the Scandinavian style stuff, that it's autonomic processes. It's a process taking care for you. So it'd be like, you know, certain subconscious systems, but also anything else outside of you that actually will affect a process for you. You know, you take enough mushrooms, they do the thinking for you, it seems, not the other way around.
Right. But there's so much wildness going on here too, because the last image I wanted to show you is this image here. This is a composite deity, and this comes to us from Memphis and is said to be a combination of Ptah, Sokar, and Osiris, all in one form, connecting the god of the underworld, the god of presence, and the creator, all in one form. But all of these versions, Ptah, the craftsman who speaks creation, and then you have Sokar, who's the builder of the city, and then you have Osiris, the black man, the god of the underworld, who dies and is reborn, Bacchus.
Yeah, that energy to bring it all back. So in fact, you've got the creation, maintenance, and that recycling. You've got the three Brahmic figures there. Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu, or whichever way around it is.
The three masculine
triad,
contained into one.
Classic triad from all over the world.
Well, we see in astrology as well, in cardinal, fixed, and mutable. It's these three forms that all matter takes at all times. Everything is always in a mode of creation, maintenance, or change, destruction. That's just everything that ever was, is that.
Yep. This is why that Trinity is so important. And we see trinities of trinities of trinities and mirrors of mirrors constantly, right?
Mm-hmm.
In these twinnings, right? And the original thing would have been that great mother and the twins, the Larrys, right? To tie it all home, right? And that's what it all comes back to, is that image. And I keep thinking, since looking into this stuff, I keep seeing that image of Snow White and the seven dwarves, the seven dactyli, trying to wake up the dead virgin, to cause a new golden age, waiting for that love to come and revitalize, you know?
It seems to me over and over again that it is basically Kundalini stuff over and over again. I'm not too sure why academics like to ignore it so much, perhaps because it's associated with woo, but it is there all over the place time and time again. And I look for other explanations, but I can't find any that satisfy.
I think the Kundalini stuff is definitely there, but you know, I'm always of this idea that there are many, many levels to all of these myths, and there's clearly more going on. And the Kundalini stuff, the overcoming of the baser self is clear. That's the entire alchemical tradition, and that's so much of the philosophy, which is why it blows my mind that a lot of academics don't want to talk about that. I think a big problem with it is that it's so undefinable in terms of scientific framing, right? Because
you could do it from the symbology alone, though. The repeating motif of the serpents for the legs, or stood on crocodiles, or stood on a dragon. You know, that's repeated everywhere, and you know what it means. So there's the foundation of it. I do think it's the woo thing, personally.
It is. That's what I mean. I was going to get it. It goes into all this wooiness, right? And the Kundalini is all of that kind of magical experience is so personal and so undefinable and ephemeral. So as soon as you're starting to get into that, people, you know, academics want concrete stuff. They want to separate everything into nice little boxes.
Little boxes, right.
Which
define
is like,
everything.
It's useful for science, but it's definitely not useful for what like you and I are doing, Ryan and Dion.
It's probably the type of person that's interested in the academic side of things, isn't interested in that more woo side either. You're going to be a bit more left-brained, aren't you?
Yeah.
I like to have the balance between the both, but that's just me.
Yeah, me too. Me too. But I strive for it.
Before I finish my little presentation, turn it over to you, Neil. I wanted us to talk a little bit about Hephaestus, because there's a clear analog here. Because when I was looking into Ptah, right, and Ptaika is not even, okay, the Egyptians did not distinguish between Ptah and Ptaika. The Greeks did when they saw these little amulets. And this is a word that's coined by Herodotus, and it means the dwarf Ptah. Right? It means the dwarf Ptah. because they just saw it as one and the same. So when I'm looking at this idea as God, the craftsman who gives birth to everything, in the original Egyptian, right, he's that first voice of reason who creates the sun.
He creates himself too, somehow.
Right? Creates himself somehow through that sound, through that vibration, right? Out of that chaos. But think about the Greek version of this. If we listen to that, if we look at the interpretation Graecae, where Ptah is Hephaestus, then the myth is kind of inverted, right? Zeus, the solar deity, is the creator of the universe, right? And Hephaestus is the one who is created by Zeus, right?
Yeah, and Herodotus
or Hera, sorry, Hera.
When Herodotus
gives birth to him entirely.
When Herodotus is writing about Egypt, he never uses Ptah ever. He just says Hephaestus every time.
Yeah, right. And so this gets kind of weird, and I'm looking at this because there's something going on with this energy of the craftsman, this image of the craftsman, and also if we look at the Greek story, right? Hephaestus is birthed by Hera solely because she saw what Zeus did with Athena and his twin Metis and got jealous and was like, I got to do the same thing. But then when it happens, he is now deformed. So she, in anger, casts him into the swamp. Again, we have this image of casting into the underworld, into the swamps, like we saw with Diamuta, right? And then in order to get back into good graces, Hephaestus builds this magical throne and gifts it to Hera, and Hera sits upon the throne and is bound in the throne, right? And he refuses to let her go until they make him a god. And then he demands for marriage. And at first he wants to marry Athena, but Athena's like, F you, I'd rather die. And Zeus is like, not even I can make Athena do anything. So then he's like, fine, I want Aphrodite. And he marries Aphrodite.
Big mistake. Because then when she cheats on him for Mars or Ares, Hephaestus is all pissed off and he's like, Zeus, do something. And Zeus looks over at them, Aphrodite and Mars, and he's like, they look like a couple to me. I don't know. It's basically like, sorry, bro, you got
you married Aphrodite Pandemos, man. She makes love
you can't do that. You can't do that.
Why would you marry that which makes love to creation? Like you can't bind her. That's the dumbest thing imaginable.
Right. Even Dionysus knew that.
Right? No.
Were you aware that Hephaestus also has a dwarven helper?
Yeah, well, this is what I was going to get at. He has all of these kabiroi, who are these dwarves that are his helpers, and he's also this limping, deformed dwarf man, right? And some of the
those kabir are also Strabo is one of them. Equates them with the Corites and the Dactylus and the Lairs. It's like this lower level of daemons where they have power over like terrestrial events.
Yeah,
so again, I'm seeing it as these autonomic functions that somehow that Ptah, that Hephaestus created dwarf, is the thing that's their autonomic system. Things in you that happen automatically outside as well. I wanted to point to one of Hephaestus' little dwarf fellas, Sedalion, which looks a lot like Lion of the Cedar. And what grows under cedar? Well, there's a myth of Orion who he's been chasing after the Pleiades. That's his lust. And somebody gets annoyed at him. It's probably Athena or somebody, and shoots arrows at his eyes, and he's blinded. Well, he goes to Hephaestus for help. And Hephaestus says, look, I can't do anything for you, mate, apart from give you one of my little guys here, Sedalion. So he hands him over, and he stands on his shoulder. Don't forget, Orion's a giant. So he's standing on the shoulder of a giant. And he can see further.
Literally.
Yeah. So this is something that...
Didn't you tell me this is where... You've shared this with me, so you finished.
I have, yeah. Yeah, I gave it the twist of... what's his name said it? The physicist.
Isaac Newton.
It was Newton,
That's where you get that phrase, standing on the shoulders of giants. It's a mythopoetic image of Orion.
Yeah, it's if I have seen further, it's because I have stood on the shoulders of giants. Well, that's talking about is Sedalion, who, when you look at him in the imagery, is clearly another mushroom god, just like those little chaps that Carl Jung favoured. And what grows under cedar? Famously, Amanita muscaria. So just more links. I don't have any sources for you, but you know, once these myths all start repeating themselves, you can pretty much tell what they're on about.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, it's that wildness, right? These little spirits that are everywhere that are connected to these mushrooms and connected to this dragon magic, and are these dragons, in a sense, these guardian spirits. And I feel like that's also what makes a dragon, is that you're possessed, or that you can use this demonic magic, right? And the muses, one of the, I didn't also say, is that the muses are connected to this, because the muses are also the children of the Great Mother. They also have this thing where they descend, right? They start with 3. You have the Titanic muses, and then you get the classical muses. Then you have the Boeotian muses, and you have the Apollonian muses. And then you have people even equate the muse with the genius. You have various Latin scholars who say the muse is the genius, and the genius is what? The Larry, the spirit of the home.
They all have overlap with each other. It's spirits. It's the possessive spirits that inspire us to do things.
Yep.
It's our thoughts.
Yep.
It's our emotions. It's our feelings. That's what this is.
It's your passions, isn't it? It's those things that activate you. It's charges of energy.
Absolutely.
Invoking
That's what this
these
is.
ancestral guardian spirits, right? That are the intermediaries, right? And as we know in this Greco-Roman tradition and in the Egyptian, everything is done through intermediaries. Every single thing. You know, and they would have seen the cells, they would have seen the viruses, bacteria, all as these kind of spirits as well, you know?
Well, I think it's fair to say they are. You know, with lack of better terminology or better understanding, you are possessed by a demon when it takes over you. You know, if you have some bad thoughts that aren't really your own, maybe you've been brainwashed a little, you are possessed. It's a good way of putting it, really, with, you know, lack of better understanding. You could say it now and people wouldn't understand what you were on about.
Right. But yeah, Dion, do you have any thoughts? And Gnostic, do you want to get your presentation up?
Yeah, sure.
I want to hear Gnostic.
All right. And then we'll do Dion last. It sounds like a nice finale.
I'm cool.
Dion went.
Dion went.
Oh, that's right. What am I talking about? Duh.
I was just getting his
Oh,
opinion.
you were asking his first thought. That's what I meant. Yeah. All right. I got some stuff up. Before I bring up the slides that I brought, I wanted to touch on the Salii for a second real quick, or the Salians, because it's some interesting stuff that it talks about in this Wikipedia page that I was looking through. So I might have to do a video on this, because, you know, the name comes from Salius, which means to jump. They're leaping priests, right? But what I found interesting, it says down here, an origin among the Etruscans. So this is going back to the Bronze Age, right? Or the early Iron Age, late Bronze Age. Etruscans to a founding by Marius, the king of the Veii. The Salii are also given the origin and connection with Dardanus and the Samothracian Depenites. So that's there we go. There we have that connection with the Corites. And the Dactylus. There's
something that's even more wild here. Came to Italy with Evander.
Yeah, I was just going to read that. Okay. In the funeral games.
Evander is a child of the mother of Lares, Laurentia again.
Exactly. So this is what happens in the Aeneid. King Evander and Aeneas are entertained by the Salii during the feast, who are commemorating the fame and the feast of Hercules. That's how you know this is going back.
Right. And it makes me think, right, Hercules is also like the child Horus, wrestling the snakes.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly. Oh my God, this is crazy. It's all coming together. So you got 12 of these, and they use song and dance as a part of religious ritual. They were state-sponsored, considered important for the maintenance of Roman social order. Their dances were also used to tell religious and historical histories. They didn't have a Bible. Well, they had their Sibylline oracles, but they told their stories through dances and songs and rhapsody, right? They would get out and perform their histories with these 12 Salii that were chosen. Right. The Salii honored. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that also, like, the Sibylline oracles are not like a book that you just read.
Right.
Right? This was a divination tool that was
Exactly.
in book form.
Exactly.
You know? So no
It
one's
was
just
used-
reading it.
Yeah, it was used for prophecy and those things. The Celia honor the gods Jupiter, Janus, and Mars. There's that triad once again, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
So this dance was referred to the tripidium. Horace describes the Celia performing this dance by stamping their feet 3 times. Their dance was associated with leaping and jumping. Seneca the Younger wrote that it was a popular dance that requires professional training to perform. Isn't that something? Right here, I wanted to read
the leapfrogging thing too that we see. Poe talks about this, and also you see that with Dionysus and frogs.
Yeah, this is the crazy part. I love Varro, by the way. You got to read Varro. He's like Cicero. Varro claimed that the Salian priests did not understand the meanings of the lyrics they sang.
It was babble.
What? They're speaking in tongues, dude. But it's even crazier than that. They contained older spellings of archaic words. That's Pelasgian.
Yeah.
The reason why I know this, you want to know why? Did you just insert that into the Wikipedia article without seeing it? No. I know this for a fact because the Samothracian mysteries did the same exact thing. They preserved older Pelasgian archaic words that were only spoke at the Samothracian mysteries as they would dance and sing like this. So what I'm looking.
There's even like a direct connection here because in the myths, the story, right? Larissa is the daughter of Pelasgus and kills him by pushing him into a barrel. And then she has to flee. And where does she flee to? Latium. It's even in the name that it means the place where she secreted herself to. And she hides in Latium where she becomes this secretive prostitute, mother of Larry's, mother of the twins, and founds Rome.
Yeah.
You know?
The Samothracian, so yeah, you're right. The Samothracian mysteries had those 2 twin gods like you were mentioning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let me just pull back. I'm going to go off this for a second. I'm going to pull up something else real quick.
I don't know if you noticed in that last text, they're wearing purple robes.
Oh, really? I'm going to go back there in a second, so hold that thought. But I just want to show something because you mentioned how this is connected with the Samothracian mysteries, right? Absolutely is. Absolutely is. Varro talks about the 2 bronze. And look at the rites went back to pre-Greek Thracian Pelasgian inhabitants of Samothrace. And there was forbidden words to learn. It was forbidden to learn the names of these great gods. So you could see how this is related to, and there you go, Heracles, Jason, Cadmus, Orpheus, Dioscoria are the founders.
Right. And there seems to be all this thing. Okay. One of the things that you see with this Larissa character is the name. They're constantly obscuring and never addressing her by a specific name, right? Larissa is her name when she's a nymph, or Laura is her name when she's a nymph. Ovid says that her name may be Lala, the Babel, but there's all of these iterations because they're trying to hide. It's a forbidden thing. It's secret, right?
Yeah. Exactly. See, this is what we have from the sources. Initiates entered through a propylon from the east. They stood in the theater. Dionysus. They stood in the theater. Once you're in the theater, you're in the domain of Dionysus. And were asked what was the greatest sin they had committed. Okay, you see, this is a mystery, right? Where you have to go in and confess and be born again, right? They poured libations into the hall of the choral dancers. We just talked about the dancers. They entered the sanctuary at night, perhaps with torches, Lucifer. Dramatically enacted the search for harmonia. That's a question mark, I guess. Some people, there's a source about that. Reception of a purple fillet worn as a belt, talisman, a magnetic iron ring coated with gold. Then you have your communion meal with the drugs and the Eucharist. That's the last part.
The dramatic reenactment of the search makes a lot of sense because
It
this
does.
is such a fundamental thing in all of the mysteries. In the mystery of Osiris, Isis searches for Osiris. In the mystery of the Cori, right? Demeter and Hecate search for the Cori.
Absolutely.
So you got to have this sort.
Got to have the search. That's always part of it's part of the mystery. So to go back to what I had with the Salii, because Dion is right. There's something crazy about to come up right here. So Plutarch describes them chanting and dancing with a quick rhythm, which sounds a lot like the Dionysian, what is it called? The song that Dionysus is attributed to, the dithyramb. So you got dithyramb.
And the triambus.
Yep, exactly. And he also wrote that they would beat daggers on shields to create music. This is Bacchic mania all day. These shields were known as ankyle, and other descriptions stated that they used flutes to songs. The Salii wore embroidered tunics under purple trabeah. What's this again? Let's take a look. The names of various Roman clothing was their color, usually red or purple. So they put the purple togas on, as we all know what this means. So the sacred chants that you get from Hesychius, Ya, Ye, Yo, You, and Yo, all of that has to do with either it has to do with like some sort of poison or drug or purple. Remember we found that etymology either meant purple or reddish or lavender, or it meant some sort of drug or medicine. But it's also a Bacchic chant that they would use connected with the
this kind of chant is so important because we see right in that it's not just the chant, but it's the wailing, right? You're crying out to create as much noise as possible to hide, right? To protect yourself, and also to cause the dead to rise, right?
Yep.
Demeter literally causes the universe to go, oh shit, we need to bring the Corey back by her mourning.
Yeah, look at this. Salian virgins. I'm going to come back to this. I have one more thing. I'm going to come back to this part. I'm not done yet. Sextus Festus makes a perplexing reference to the Salian virgins in a text called Alias Stilo is the source, if you guys want to read that. That's a primary source from a Latin source. Wearing the pallidemitum and pointed apex. By the way, I'm going to talk about this more. Just don't forget about this. These Salii, these maidens, these are young boy virgins. I think their ages are like 7 to 12, I think it says. I think it should say it on here somewhere, but it doesn't have it for some reason. But I know for a fact that after age 12, they had to leave. They had to give up their spot to a new young boy. That's according to the sources. I know that for a fact. Were employed to assist the College of Pontiffs in carrying out sacrifices in the Regia. It has been suggested that the passage of Festus describes a transvestite initiation. I didn't use that word. I think that's a probably dated word.
It's fine. It's an outdated word, but we understand.
I think they're just pulling it from the source. It's 2005. I mean, back then that word might have still been lingering around. That's probably what happened there.
Well, some people do identify under that term, right? People who just want to who identify as men but want to dress up for fetish reasons. But I doubt that's not what's happening here.
No,
right?
but the reason why I read it though is because what does that remind you of? The Great Mother Mysteries.
Yes, right.
You can see these young boys being initiated into the most sacred mysteries of the Romans. Now, I said I wanted to go back to this apex thing, right? If you look up here, where is it? If you look up this, by the way, one more thing I wanted to read. Where is it? This right here. The Salius, after they were done with their term, after they became too old to serve, they would like go through puberty and they would become a young man. They were no longer a Salii anymore. What would happen is they would immediately, because how special they were, they didn't get like cast aside as like you're done. They immediately went into the biggest positions in the Roman Empire. Either there would be a consul, which means there's a good chance that Julius Caesar was one of these Salii at one point in his life. They become a flamen, they become a pontifex, or an augur. All right? Now this is where shit gets crazy. So these Salii, who we already have connected with the Lairs and the Samothracian Corites, we already did this connection, right? If you look up the apex headdress, what does that remind you of? This is what they wore, dude.
Oh, wow.
All right. So I'm going to put this aside. I'm going to put this aside for now. I'm going to pull up some of my sources now.
Interesting.
All right. So let me pull up my slides. And I want to start here. Let me share my screen real quick. And so remember, we were talking about this last time with the bearded dragons.
Yep. So
I just want to recap. We were talking about this. This is a famous ancient step. By the way, this image right here, this is from a museum, And Herodotus talks about the priest of, I think it was Thebes. I'm pretty sure it was Thebes. They held these, the priest would hold these staffs. This was their staffs. This was a sacred staff called the herald staff. By the way, it looks like the herald is Hermes, right?
Right.
For the priest of the mysteries of Thebes would hold these. That's how you knew they were a priest. Well, this is also, you find this in the church, right? We already talked about this before.
Yes.
The church still continues to tradition. By the way, this you will not see this in a Catholic church. You will only see this in a Greek Orthodox church. This is the Greek way. Christianity's playbook was to let local orders keep their orders, but Christianize them. So you could see a remnant of the old Greek pagan rites carrying on into the church, which is this staff. In the Latin West, this is a layers, an Etruscan layers, and look at his staff, right? Check this out. We know that in the Latin West, they don't have the serpent staff. They use the layer. They use the augur staff.
The
And this is a quote. This is the dragon, which gave power to the beast. The Pope received his power from Rome. Here is a Catholic staff shaped in the same way as the augurs. The end of the circle is a dragon from the Catholic Church's relics. The dragon appeared to be sitting in a tree eating a fruit. And it's purple too. See, it's purple. Isn't that crazy? All right. So look at this is the augur staff. Also, the layers hold this. The layers and the augurs, who used to be salii when they were young boys. They hold this staff. They do divination with it. It's very famous. It's a shepherd's crook. It's like the Egyptian shepherd's crook. You see, there's the Augustan family. That's Augustus holding the layers, holding the augur staff. There's a Roman augur, and it's on a coin, right?
Yeah, and it's a dragon tongue.
Where do you see that?
I said it's a dragon, right?
It is a dragon tongue. You're right. Yeah, absolutely.
I see it as also as ergot going from wheat.
Yeah, it's probably both. It's probably a pun on both. So then I wanted to bring this back up. It got really blurry all of a sudden, but you remember seeing that image. This is the tiara that the Salii boys would wear. And what does it look like? It looks exactly like this. They still wear the Salii headdress. It has the two embroidered pieces coming down, and then a cone shaped. I mean, am I crazy? Am I crazy?
No, you're not. You're not crazy at all.
It's even spiked on top.
Instead of a cross, then you would be 100% on.
All they do is they just Christianized it.
Yep.
And now it's the Catholics thing. But we know that they keep the old symbols going. We know the Greek East did this with the serpents, and the Latin West is doing it too. So there you go.
This is taken further back to the priests of Babylon as well. The Apkallu priests wore similar headdresses.
A lot of people say that, and I think you're onto something because Romans are borrowing heavily.
I think these are just repeating motifs rather than somebody taking it, carrying it on. You know, these things mean something. Having a big hat means something from the Pope to a stovepipe.
Absolutely.
Remember the old-fashioned?
Absolutely.
It's like a symbol of authority. Those three crowns are heaven, earth, and purgatory, or whatever you want to.
And it's just awesome it's amazing that these young 7 to 12-year-old boys would be wearing these, and they would be performing the mystery and speaking archaic Pelasgian words. It's so crazy to think about this.
You got to think about this from the performance perspective and the Dionysian perspective. All of this is magical costumes. All of this is about distraction and creating an image of power and authority. So how do you create an image of power and authority? You look at the foreign other that is a power and authority in the same way that you don your clothes with the freaking snakes. And you dress up to make yourself look scary. You dress up to make yourself look regal.
It brings the energy up too. It gets people panic. The word panic from pan. Yeah, that's what that is. It brings the energy high up. When you see ever seen like two wolves fighting and they're like, that's what that is. That's that energy high up. By the way, the muse just controlled your brain right there, Snappy, because the next slide is about me. I was about to take it over to the theater because you're right. All of this is beautiful. All this is the Salii dancing, the Pelasgians dancing. They're doing theater. Remember how I mentioned the Samothracian mysteries? They did the mysteries in the theater. I just talked about that. So this is an inscription in Latin, inscribed in a Roman theater. So it's on the wall of a Roman theater, and it says, we don't even know who wrote it. It says, on, you Bacchants, bearing sacred wands with Bacchic posturing. And then the next one over on a different side says, then, group by group, the gathering of girls beyond our ken, in concert striking up, sang Iwan, Iwo, Iwo, Iwium, up leaking in a brisk and Bacchic measure. So there's those old Pulaskian chants. Remember? Yeah. The yo, the Iwa, the ya, all those Bacchic chants that they're performing in the theater. The mystery. All right. So this is from Plutarch. Plutarch's talking about these theater performances, and he says Pylades put on the divinity of the frenzied god himself when from Thebes he led the Bacchants to the Italian stage, a delight and a terror to men. So full by his dancing did he fill all the city with untempered fury of the demon. Daimonos is the word. Thebes knows, by the way, that's the Lares. That's the Lares. That's what it is. He's possessed by the Lares or the Muse, however you want to siphon that out. And it says, Thebes knows, but the God who was born of the fire. Love that. The God who was born of the fire. The heavenly one is this, whom we see brought into the world by these hands that can utter everything. Whoo! Spitting fire on this one. So this talking about the actors in the play are possessed by the god. That's how the performance becomes convincing.
I love this first thing, right? Put on the divinity of the frenzied god himself. So it's even dressing up in the costume is part of the thing, right? And then you get yourself worked up into the frenzy, right?
It's
and
wild.
when we're dealing with the frenzy, again, we're back to those muses, to the fury, and to the mother of Lares, because the mother of Lares is mania. Accilarentia and mania are the same.
See how it all comes up? It all comes full circle. Like you see it just all coming back. All right.
Now,
And then he says,
if I can say real quick,
Yeah.
I remember we did an episode on City Dionysia.
Yeah.
It's when the Dionysian rituals turned into theater performances, a theater competition. That was how they would let it out. They would come together and have satires, tragedies, tragos, meaning goat songs, tragedies or goat songs, the comedias, and all that. And that was their Dionysic release, was to watch it on stage.
And they would crown the winner. Pindar was the champion for like 10 years in a row. And then in the late 5th century BCE, you had Sophocles and Euripides all duking it out against each other. Aeschylus, they all lived in the same time period. Or no, Sophocles and Euripides. Aeschylus was before that. But anyways, there was a spirit of competition.
There was a spirit of competition
There
amongst the philosophers and poets to
even after
expound the mystery. Who can expound the mystery in a more manic or panic way? Let's say. There is a competition and a dialogue in this philosophical thing.
And that's what Frogs is about. Frogs is about Dionysus going down into Hades. By the way, people go, he didn't die in that. That's not a dying and rising story. Well, you didn't read the story then. And the story opens up with Dionysus
committing suicide,
talking to Hercules and going, how do I get to Hades? Hercules is like, there's 3 ways. You can take a poison, you can hang yourself, or you can do it. He fucking killed. It's literally a dying and rising story.
Yeah.
Dionysus commits the act, takes the drug, he goes down into Hades, and then he judges between Aeschylus and and Euripides of who is the better poet. And then so that was going on. This is pre-Hellenistic times. Later, during the Hellenistic period, when Ptolemy starts to host all this stuff down in Alexandria becomes the spot. You have Callimachus and Apollodorus hate each other, and they're dissing each other in the theater. They're making plays, taking stabs at each other without calling each other out by name. That was a known thing in the sources, how Callimachus and Apollodorus would dig at each other all the time.
We call that sneak dissing.
Sneak dissing. Yeah, that's what it is.
One wild thing I read about frogs is that the priests got super upset at Aristophanes and wanted to beat him in public because they said he was exposing the mysteries, but he was so popular, he was able to get away with it. There are several examples of this because it even comes up later by his political rivals, because he would write comedies attacking his political rivals, and then they're like, you are a bastard who exposes the mysteries.
Right.
And they use this as a diss on him.
By the way,
So Frogs is amazing.
Frogs is amazing, and not only that, Aeschylus does reveal the mysteries subtly. You could find it, and I have it coming up in a couple slides.
Oh,
so
wow, I'm excited.
Yeah, and you've heard it before, but I'm just going to remind you. So this is the next one from Plutarch, where he says, "We thought we were looking on Bacchus himself when the old man lustily led the Maenads in their furious dance and played Cadmus, tripping it in the fall of his years, and the messenger coming from the forest where he had spied on the route of the Bacchants, and frenzied Agave, exulting in the blood of her son. Heavens, how divine was the man's acting!" They're performing the Euripides Bacchae, and they're saying it was so good. The actors were so good that there's no way they weren't possessed by the god. Like, it was like they were watching the whole scene play out in front of them, like it really happened. That is amazing. This makes you want to go back in time and be an ancient Greek, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Like, I can't believe we gave up this world for the church world. I cannot believe it. It's so mind blowing that we gave this world up, but we're getting it back though. So that's good news. Anyways, yeah. So this is from.
It's kind of feral, though, isn't it? The Greek stuff's kind of feral for modern eyes. You know, I think it'd be a bit too much, a lot too much.
Well, you know, I don't think we really would want to go back to ancient Greece it's a man's world, ancient Greek. You know, like, we all love Orpheus and whatnot and the Orphics, but those guys are on the fringes of society and are hated. Homer doesn't even talk about Orpheus. Why do you think that is? You know?
Yeah, there was a lot of that going on. I think, I agree. So Pentheus writes, or this is about Pentheus. It's from Euripides. But think about, even in the play itself, there's acting. So this is not just the actors that are talking about. They're talking about the characters that the actors are playing. So it's like an infinite loophole going. What do you call it when you're going through something and then through something? And wormhole.
A wormhole.
And it says, "How do I look then?" Pentheus talking to Dionysus. "Am I standing like Ino stands or Ague, my mother?" He's dressing up as a woman. Dionysus says, "In seeing you, I seem to be seeing them in person. But this lock of hair of yours," remember the lock of hair we're talking about? "But this lock of hair of yours has come out of its place, not as I fitted it under the sash." She's wearing the hair like you guys mentioned earlier. Wow. This is what Pentheus is doing. "Inside and shaking it forward and shaking it backward and acting as a bacchant. I dislodged it from its place." That's what Pentheus says. "But I," Dionysus says, "whose concern it is to attend to you, will put it back in position." You get it? He's the spirit that is helping you become the person you're trying to act as. That's Dionysus, the theater spirit. "But hold your head straight." Pentheus says, "Look, adorn me, for on you I depend indeed." That's the important line right there. What does that mean? What is Euripides saying? He's putting on the Dionysian mask to become something else, right? You need Dionysus to come out of yourself and to act as something different. And he's saying,
absolutely,
"Your belt is loose and the pleats of your robe are not in order where they hang below the ankles. I think so too, at least by the right foot. But on this side, the robe is straight and tender." So it's Dionysus who is helping him perform the mystery.
I want to just do you remember that part? One of my favorite scenes in all of Frogs is when Dionysus dresses up as Heracles, right? And you have his slave there, Zen is like laughing at him, going like, "You are such a fop. No one would ever believe that leather booty Dionysus could pass as Heracles." But when he goes into the underworld, they all assume he's Heracles, and they say, "Last time you were here, you messed this place up. You tore the place up, and now you got to get whipped for it."
Right.
So then Dionysus gets punished as Heracles.
Right.
All
Isn't that
he
nuts?
needed was the costume. The god of the underworld. Think about it. The god of the underworld gets whipped in the underworld for the sins of his brother. What the frick?
That's another mystery right there.
Right.
Now, similar. This is a nice painting from some Renaissance paint. I don't know who this is, but But I wanted to show because similar to how the Romans would honor the ancestors as layers, the Greeks would also, they would wreath their statues of their ancestors and feed it wine during these Dionysian festivals. So they would.
And it has no arms, so it's a xenophon.
Yeah. And they were bringing them back to life for the festival, for these Dionysius, the Bacchanals. They would bring their ancestors back for the night, and they would wreath them and feed them wine and let them and tend to them like they were actually there. So this is just an image that I just wanted to show. It's just like, I just look at this. This is such a beautiful painting. Look at, this is Greek, but is this Roman or Greek? But that's your standard. The Romans would have the standard. They would represent the layers. And like, you could see like there's like different planets on there. There's all these different representations, but they would hold the standard as if they're holding all the spirits of their ancestors, and they would bring it with them. But like, just look at this procession of the musicians, the dancers, the singers. Look at this. This is the world that we left behind. It's so sad. What a beautiful world it was. Anyways, I wanted to show that. The Sun Runner, that's the Sun Runner, right? In the Mithras mysteries, they call it the Heliodramus, right? All right, so this is another. Oh, it's got really. How did this get so?
No worries.
I don't know why it got so like far apart. Anyways, that's the layers again.
So in that past picture, the person with their hair adorned with the crowns was throwing up the hand sign. Had the Sabazian hand sign on the robe.
Really?
Mm.
Yeah, if you zoom in, that one right there. Yeah, the one with the hair.
Right here?
Did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
look at his hand.
Oh my God, you're right. It's definitely, and he's holding the
999,000.
Yeah.
666.
Yeah, there you go.
for sure. That's crazy.
Now it's
Oh,
so
now
funny
it's-
when I
I
know
go straight
this. When we see the Pope
I'd like
with
to
his
point-
sign, and he's freaking summoning Satan.
Right.
I'd like to point out as well, when I said before that these dwarven-led creatures, these daimons, seem to be automatic, processes, whether they're out there in the wild or in your body. The fact that they put the 7 planets up there just reinforces that for me, because these are, as far as the ancients saw them, are the automated processes of the universe that have an effect on you. So putting those 7 things there would reinforce that for me.
Yeah, I think that's a good observation for sure. Absolutely.
That
Now-
which is above is the same as that which is below.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, so Plato in his apology, this is Socrates' words, right? Socrates was considered to be a Bacchus and a gadfly. So Plato writes, "For if you put me," Socrates is saying this, "if you put me to death, you will not easily find another who, to use a rather absurd figure, attaches himself to the city as a gadfly to a horse." The oistress, right?
Right.
Oistromania. Which, though large and well-bred, is sluggish on account of his size and needs to be aroused by stinging. That they use the word Christing there. I'll show you in a second. I think the God fastened me upon the city such capacity, and I go arousing. So a gadfly is somebody who will die for the truth. They will die. They will not be pressured into changing their mind. They will die for what they believe in, no matter what. That's a gadfly. And when you die, if you successfully die as a gadfly, you would be immortal. We're talking about Socrates right now, 2,400 years later. He's alive and well. He's more alive and well than people who died 10 years ago that are not being talked about. You know what I'm saying? Socrates is immortal. He was immortalized.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So-
he became immortal. That's so true.
He's absolutely a god. So, all right, this is a little blurry, but Damascus is writing about how, he talks about the dismemberment and reassembling of Dionysus and Osiris in his work called Life of Isidore. Then he goes on to say, and he's quoting from Plato, he says, "The last query will emerge becomes in part of a question of what relation is becoming a particular god, Dionysus, Bacchus, and the notion of becoming like God in so far as possible, the accepted aim of Platonic philosophy, and clarifying the conceptual basis under Damascus' work, the Phaedo Comedy, which also addresses the notion of becoming a Bacchus and the position of this process in the broader ascent through the scale of virtues. The philosophical history, by its nature as a biological text, considers the development of virtues and the possibilities of becoming a Bacchus and the godlikeness through the exemplification of these things. So Plato would say in the book Phaedo, he says, a philosopher is a Bacchus. A philosopher is someone who can become outside of their own self and see things as they are. So that's what a Bacchus, that's what they mean by that. So like the theater uses the term become a Bacchus, philosophers also have their own version of a Bacchus. And they both have to do with this gadfly thing. So here's the Prometheus bound. Aeschylus, remember I said he reveals the mysteries? Here's where he does it. Right here. In Prometheus bound. He says, so you have, this is Prometheus is talking to Io. Io is this goddess who turns into a cow.
Yeah.
She comes back from being a cow.
From the gadfly, right?
And if you read Apollodorus, his Bibliotheca, he straight up says that Io is Isis. That Io is Isis. He says it.
Beautiful.
300 BC. You can take that to the bank with you. Apollodorus says that Io is Isis. By the way, Ya is Osiris, Io is Isis. The two Bacchae chants. And then guess what Apollo is called? Yay. Remember I showed you guys that source where Plutarch mentions that the secret name of Apollo is Yaios. Yaios. So you have Yao is Dionysus, Yo is Isis or Aphrodite or Yo right here, and then you have Yayo, which is Apollo, which is that.
Add one more that we talked about, Lala. Ovid reveals that's the secret name of the mother of Lares, Acalarentia. Lala.
Lala. That's
another chant.
It's a la 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 la. It's one of those tongue chants that you get.
Right.
So he says, I grew I grew horns as you see me now. So Yo becomes this is going to be very important from one of my slides coming up. Yo becomes the cattle. Right? Why does she become a cattle? No one ever talks about this. But as Aeschylus reveals the mystery right here, I was pricked by the sharp sting of a gadfly. The word that I use for sting right here, Christ. Christes. That's Christ. That's Christ in the accusative form. So she's being stung, right? She's the one being stung. Yeah. So, and with maddened leaps, I rushed off to the stream of Kirknea, good to drink from, the spring of Lerna, and my footsteps were dogged by the earth-born Chthonian herdsman Argus. Intemperate in his fierceness, staring with many eyes, a swift death unexpectedly robbed him of life. But I harassed by the gadfly, oistros, where is that word? Let's see, it's in here somewhere, right there. Oistros. Oh no, right here. I'm sorry. Oistroplex. That's the word right there. As if by a divine scourge have been driven on from the land. And it's so basically what's going on here is Prometheus is the gadfly who's willing to die for the truth. The truth is that you can become God. That Zeus is not telling you everything. Yeah, Zeus is keeping you from your full potential. And I'm going to bring the light and you can become God. And so Yo gets this gnosis and she is punished for this. She becomes a cow, but she is stung by the gadfly. And once you're stung by the gadfly, it is your duty to repeat the gnosis to everyone you know and spread the gnosis out to the world and help people become divine. That's what's happening here. Now it gets even crazier.
You got to remember your true nature, right? Drink from the right waters.
Right.
You're a child of starry heaven. Exactly.
You are divine. You are made to be divine. Prometheus made you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and also in the Orphic mysteries, you are half Dionysian inside your spirit. Your spirit is Dionysus. You are Dionysus. Become Dionysus because you are Dionysus. When
the throne is, right?
Yeah, when Zeus created the world, he took this flesh of the Titans and the spirit of Dionysus and created the whole cosmos and humans out of that. and you are that. So your spirit is Dionysus, and your flesh is Titan. And Plato talks about titanic nature. Rid yourself from the titanic nature and become
dragon.
Become a Bacchus. Become a Bacchus. Become immortal. Play the part. Put on the mask. Look at Prometheus, right? What does it say down here? Prometheus among the satyrs. Huh? I thought Dionysus was the one surrounded by satyrs. Right here, it's Prometheus. That's odd. Prometheus.
And if I could say one thing, Ryan could point out that there was a 3, 4, 5 up in there, the Pythagorean. If you go back.
I was looking at the triangle.
Yeah, that deals with the elliptic of the poles, the precession of the equinox.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
I would say that the smaller triangle on the left, that does look like the ecliptic angle. I know they're probably 3, 4, 5 triangles. It looks like there's some other mathematical thing going on in there as well.
It almost looks like the golden mean, because the golden mean would be this is double this. So I wonder if there's a golden mean going on.
Yeah,
the golden
3, 4, 5 triangle.
Yeah,
the 3, 4, 5 is in golden ratio by its nature.
Wow, that's amazing. And so you have another image from another lid from one of these pots of Prometheus with the satyrs. 5th century BCE. This is very ancient. Once again, Prometheus among the satyrs. What is going on? Well, actually,
I was going to say, this is Luciferian context, that light bringer, that the one that to initiate the rebirth. Cool.
One of the greatest philologists of all time, Friedrich Nietzsche. What does Friedrich Nietzsche say? Friedrich Nietzsche was such a good philologist that he went through and systematically figured out that there was a dualistic system within the ancient Greek poets of the Apollonian and the Dionysian. I talked about this on my channel. There was a lot of classicists that were like, that's not true. And then they're like, and then other classes, the good classicists were like, actually, no, he's right. There's calendars that marked half the year with Dionysus, half the year with Apollo. And there's absolutely a lot of truth behind this. Plutarch even talks about this. What's his name? Who writes Saturnalia? Macrobius even says that.
Macrobius says it full on. He goes.
Yeah, he says that Apollo and Dionysus are the same exact god.
And so is Saturn.
Yeah, so there's the heavenly and the chthonic son of God, Apollo and Dionysus. But what the reason why I brought up Friedrich Nietzsche is because he says the first mask of Dionysus, the first person to be Dionysus was Prometheus. And that is because the first tragic play on recorded history is Aeschylus's Prometheus Bound.
Beautiful.
So Prometheus is the first mask of Dionysus. He's the one who becomes the Bacchus by going to the cross and dying, which is what Jesus tries to do too. So here you go again.
He succeeds in doing, right? We're still talking about him too, for better and for worse.
Right.
He did flip the poles. We just don't like how it turned out.
Exactly. Jesus performed the mystery of becoming a Bacchus and dying for his reforms. It happened.
Yeah, it fully happened, just like it happened for Heracles.
And Prometheus. Prometheus's Aeschylus was a game changer. The blood of Echor was everywhere. It's all the craze. Everyone was trying to find the blood of Echor.
Right. Some people even argue that Jack Parsons Christed himself and burnt himself up and did the same thing. You know?
Probably. Who's going to be the next Christ? W.B. Yeats predicted. He said there was 3 Christs in history. He said the first Christ was Helen of Troy. The second Christ was Jesus of Nazareth. And the third Christ is going to come after the year 2000. He died in like 1940 or something. I don't know when 1901 or something.
I would argue there's far more than 3. And
that's what he said. I'm just repeating what he said.
Yeah. Helen of Troy I'll give him, and I'll give him Jesus, but I'd also throw in Medea in there too. Right?
I would agree with that. By the way, but here's the thing. Medea, if you read Herodotus, Medea is Helen of Troy, and she's also Io. Yeah. Io, who's the one stung by the gadfly, is Io. And Herodotus equates Io with Medea and Helen of Troy as like this triform figure of the mother or something. It's a weird. Just read Herodotus book 1. Just read it.
Oh, it gets so wild too when you start to look into Achilles and stuff, because there's this whole thing where Helen of Troy, or Helen never actually goes to Medea Helen never goes to Troy. Okay, Stesichorus says this in his version of the play. It only survives in, I think, in some of the fragments of Ibycus. But what happens is she gets transmuted to Egypt. And who else gets transmuted to Egypt with her is Achilles, because they are out of time in Egypt. Because what it is they are two sides of the same coin. They're
Right.
the same figure. And this is why when they die, they get married in Elysium and reform. It's that
Yeah.
Virgo and Scorpio together, the ultimate killer with the ultimate savior, coming
Wow.
together to form that unity. And that is
That's
the
that-
mystery.
That's that yin yang going on. It's crazy.
And they
So-
give birth to the next generation, but they're out of time. There's this problem. They need to get back into sync with each other. You
Yeah.
know?
That's crazy.
And
So
you know,
anyways-
you also got Hermes on there as well at
Yeah.
the top left.
At the top right here. Yeah.
Yeah,
He's the herald. He's the herald. He's got the staff that we were talking about.
and he's touching. Where is he touching him at?
He's Christ in him.
It's
Yeah.
fine. Yeah.
Right in his eyes.
Look at that.
All right. So
So,
all right, so there's a little bit more now. It's a little bit more now. Oh, this is another passage from. Oh, this is crazy. So this is from a novel from the 1st century by an author named Longus called Daphnis and Chloe, and he writes that by the way, it's translated as love, but it's eroti. Unless I have grown these grays. By the way, Eros is another spirit, is another Bacchic spirit sent by the Muse, sent by Aphrodite, actually, to be more accurate. But it's that spirit that takes you over. It makes you do something that you would normally not do, which is what love is, right?
we also have there's two types of eros, because there's also the Orphic eros, which is that drives Phanes to literally rip himself apart. It's that necessity. It's that force.
This might be that force right here. If you want to, if I can read this, he says,
Yes.
"You are consecrated to Eros, my children," and I'm just going to read it as Eros because that's how it should sound. And Eros is looking after you. They enjoy this very much, as if they were listening to a story and not a fact. And as just what Eros is, a boy or a bird, and what power he has. Eros is a god, young, beautiful, and winged. This is why he enjoys youth, pursues beauty, and makes souls take wing. He makes souls take wing. Isn't that something? Eros has more power even than Zeus. Did you hear? Let me repeat that. Eros has more power even than Zeus. What? If you're a fan of Greek mythology, you should be going, your mind should be blown right now. Zeus is the all-powerful one. He's Zeus Hypsistos. He's the most high. He's the logos of the cosmos. He's in control of everything. He can send a lightning bolt and kill anyone whenever he wants. But you're telling me that Eros has more power than Zeus? He rules the elements, rules the stars, rules his fellow gods, more so even than you rule your goats and sheep. All the flowers are the work of Eros. All the trees are the creations, and his account rivers flow and winds blow. I have known even a bull. The bull is Yo, by the way. The cow, the bull, right? A cow and a bull are the same species, the same animal. Just one's a female, one's a male. I have even known a bull in love, and he bellowed as if stung by the gadfly. There's that word again, oistro. Stung by the gadfly. So there it is again. And a he goat who fancied a she goat and followed her everywhere. And of course, I once young myself and in love with Amaryllis. I forgot about food. All right, so Eros is this powerful god who has power over everything. And by the way, there's truth to this. This isn't just some random thing that this guy made up. If you read the actual the myths in the ancient myths in Homer and all these stories, what happens when the hero's in trouble? What happens when Odysseus is in trouble or when Jason is in trouble? Eros comes along with his bow and strikes one of these women, whether it's Medea or whether it's whatever her name is in the Odyssey.
Ariadne.
Ariadne. He strikes them, And then they come and they save the hero. And then Medea comes and saves Jason. Medea was stung by the Christing of Eros. She was hit by the arrow, by the toxin, by the Ya. See it? You see what I'm saying?
I think you can take it more metaphysical as well. The Eros, that power of attraction, is the fundamental of physics. Everything in the universe happens by being attracted or repelled. It's like magnetism.
I'm glad you reminded me of that, because in one of Hesiod's, Hesiod has multiple accounts of how his theogony is like changes up. He has like two different theogonies. In one of the accounts, he says, out of chaos sprung Eros and Nyx. So Nyx is night, but Eros is not day. Don't you think if you're going to do a duel, out of chaos becomes day and night? He doesn't say that. Why does he say Eros and Nyx? Because Eros is that attraction, is gravity attraction, and Nyx is that dark matter that's expanding.
It's just like you see.
It's scientific. It's scientific, dude.
Scientific,
in
absolutely.
the earliest Orphic, right? Out of chaos, you get the Chronos, which is time, and you get necessity, Anunki. That is the feminine version of Eros. Necessity and love, these are the same kind of emotions. It's that desire that drives us for the other, for knowledge, right?
Yeah.
The one becomes many so that it can know itself. And
isn't that something?
One comes out of that night, out of that chaos.
But I always used to scratch my head. Why does Hesiod say it's Eros and Nyx and not day and Nyx? Because it's a scientific theory of gravity opposing dark matter.
But it's also, Nyx, when you read the stories too, Nyx is the light. She is the sun. This is part of the mystery again. Just like Osiris is the black god who's also the sun. It's part of the mystery.
That's why there's always a bright
get to the day.
Yeah, that's why there's always a bright moon in the sky at night, and then during the day it's So
can somebody remind me at the end of Neil's presentation that I think I've just solved the major mystery of Osiris during this conversation? So just remind me when you're done, if you would.
All right, I'm almost done too, so I want to hear that. All right, so this is a Bacchus, but you know who this actually is? This is John the Baptist.
Yeah, John the Baptist.
This is a famous painting by Da Vinci where he depicts John the Baptist as Bacchus because he recognized the mystery of John the Baptist as a Bacchus, willing to die, willing to become a god by dying for the truth. And this
There's another version of that. There's another version by Da Vinci where he had the Theseus with the pine cone on top, and he's clearly had to paint it out and paint a crucifix over the top because whoever was in charge of him was like, no, too far. Right. It reminds me of when they made a Christian cosmology, obviously was surrounded by Greek gods in the sky. And some 17th century Christians went, hang on a minute, we're surrounded by paganism. We better change this up. So they converted it to the Christian gods. But then the cat was out of the bag to some extent because, oh, wait a minute, those things align perfectly. Suddenly the 12 of the Zodiac are the 12 apostles. Wait a minute, there's something fishy here. No, take it down, boy. Just everyone took it down really quickly because it gave it away.
Yep.
Sorry, continue.
That's why the Protestants freak out so much about images, right? And try to strike them all because it's easier to strike them all than to try and explain any of it.
Right. That's why when you talk to these Protestant types, it's like they have no spirit. There's no soul there. They're just like, they're hard to be around. They're not fun. They're not funny. They're not like, there's no spirit there. There's no human aspect to these people.
Well, when you get involved into that oppressive energy, right? That true Saturnian tyrannical energy, right? What is it about? It's about cutting you off from all love, cutting you off from all community.
That's why the images are
isolating you in the dark.
The images
putting you in a box.
Your will.
Because those images,
that black Saturnian cube.
Those images is what bring the world. Those images is what tune your mind to have ideas about things. You're supposed to see things. You're supposed to see different things, and then you can think about different.
You're supposed to don costumes and take on images and change form.
Yeah, they influence you.
Static.
That's why they're scared of it because the images influence people and they're scared of it. They think it's evil. Actually, they think it's demonic because it is. It is demonic.
Yeah.
They're not.
Yeah,
it is.
They're actually absolutely correct when they say that. Christians. Oh,
They
by the way,
just don't know what the daimones are. They have no freaking understanding.
they're scared of demonic power.
They're
but
afraid
that's
of having a conversation with their neighbors that are everywhere.
and none of them are going to be
Love
immortal.
angels, though.
None of them are going to be immortal. They're all just going to. Whatever. Let's not get into that.
But even the angels, they're terrified of the angels. Let's be honest, unless they think it's their guardian angel, but that's a more modern thing that comes out of occultism.
Right.
You know?
Now, this is a Greek-influenced statue of Bodhisattva, a Dionysian Buddha, as we talked about earlier. It's got the headdress and everything, right?
The
I just wanted
Apollonian hair.
Yeah, we already talked about that too. So we can just keep going. Now, this is where I'm going to close out on. The perfect example of a human in recent times who donned the mask of Bacchus, but it took him over it so much that it actually killed him, is Heath Ledger. Heath Ledger was so possessed. He told people this. His friends all knew this, that he would get into a role and he would be so possessed by the role that it would consume him, even when they weren't acting. Even when he would go home and sleep at night, he was still playing the role. He would get taken over by Bacchus. This is the last. So a lot of people think the last movie he did was Dark Knight. It wasn't. This is the last movie he did.
Yeah.
You know, and it's ironic also that Joker stuff.
Yeah, I'm about to bring that in. Watch.
Because even Joaquin Phoenix, he'll end up in a mental institution every now and then too. You know.
Yeah, check this out. I'm gonna give it right over to you because I want to hear your thoughts on this. So this is the last movie he did. This movie is very trippy. It's about a magic mirror. Johnny Depp's in it. Colin Farrell's in it. Jude Law's in it. Christopher Plummer's in it. Huge, big budget movie. And it's about a magic mirror that you can walk into and you can go into a world. You can dream whatever you want. You can control. It's like virtual reality, but it's like trippy as hell. And
there's Terry Gilliam.
This is his movie.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is the scene that they're in. Look at the Freemasonic backdrop. You know what I mean? The fruits, and there's Heath Ledger. There's Aphrodite. It looks like Aphrodite sitting right there, right? The beautiful maiden
with the long hair covering
the long
everything.
hair
it's
covering
very
everything.
Reminiscent of that Boccaccio.
Look at she's sitting by a tree with an apple on it. Tree of knowledge, right?
This is a Terry Gilliam film, don't you? Terry Gilliam made this film.
We just said that.
So,
yeah.
Oh, did you? Wasn't listening. I don't listen.
And then, so this is the tree, and you see the apple's hanging down, but it's hanging down by a string. What? The fruit of knowledge is hanging down by a string? Why is that? Well, look at this.
Like the thread of fate?
In the movie, this is what happens to him. This happens to Heath Ledger in the movie. This is the last thing he ever filmed. So I'm telling you, this consumed him. In the second last movie he did, this is the second last movie he did. Look, he's wearing the purple. He's the clown. He's upside down. What does that remind you of?
The tarot. Oh my God. Going on that journey.
People can be consumed by a role that it can take you over, and you can literally die from it. That's what happened to Heath Ledger. That's how powerful this energy is from the body.
You know, some of his occult fascination actually started in an earlier movie called The Sin Eater, but then it was released under another name called The Order, and it deals with the esoteric Catholic. Yeah, in Italy, where he could remove your sins using salt and bread.
But the point,
demons.
The last thing I want to say to tie it up is that to become a Bacchus is to become stung by the gadfly and to die for something that you're willing to die for, that you're going to be persecuted for, but if you can stay with it, you will be immortal.
Like it.
Wild. Amazing presentation, Neil. So, Ryan, you wanted to talk to us about Osiris. What was your grand revelation?
It's quite cool, this, actually. It involved a calculator. I'm very sorry, everybody. But we're talking about Osiris and Dionysus, and it just flashed into my brain that these are kind of annual gods. You know, it's this cycle, essentially, of the year, you know, dying and being reborn. And then Neil commented that Dionysus was cut up into pieces. And I'm thinking, well, Osiris was also cut into pieces, 14 pieces to be exact. Sometimes it changes, but most of the time it's 14 pieces. So I thought, well, what was the Egyptian year? The Egyptian year was 360 because of a circle and 5 extra days that they just assigned to different gods. So I did a calculation. What is 360 times 14? 5040, Plato's favorite number that you can find in laws, that it was said the perfect city will contain 5,040 households.
Yeah.
What else is special about that number? It's one of these deep harmonic numbers that's to do with precession, but also, check this, Dion, set 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6 times 7, that's called 7 factorial, equals 5040. And now I'm thinking about it, is probably one of the major reasons why 7 is so cherished. So there you go, major thing, as far as I can see, done now with the calculator.
That's pretty nuts.
That is so wild. Interesting. All right, guys, we should wind it down. We've been almost going for 3 hours here. Do you guys, each of you have a chance to go, want to give a kind of final rundown on your thoughts on the dragon tongue in today's kind of episode and what we discussed? We'll start with you, Dion.
Can I go first quickly? Do you mind if I go first?
Yeah.
So if we remember last week, we looked at the actual characters with the circles and the lines joining up. And I said, I might have an inroad as to what they are. And I said, in previous things I've looked at, it's counting. They want you to do kind of gematria on it and isopsophy. Well, I did count those in that little phylactery that you had. Unfortunately, some of it's damaged, so I couldn't quite tell if I was counting correctly. The maths I got out of it, unfortunately, didn't yield anything, but the 2 numbers I got from it were 21 and 24, which are esoteric numbers, 24 hours a day. 21 is the number of the major arcana in the tarot and similar things of that ilk. So I didn't actually pull anything out of it, but they are
I did want to say one
suspicious.
thing about that. I've been digging into this quite a bit since we first talked about the chakra-teres, and I'm pretty certain that it's a combination of Lala and Sabazios, Lalazios, or Lalazos. Like, as Neil even almost read it, just verbatim. It's we were overcomplicating and overthinking it. They're just twisting a couple of the letters from the Greek, and then they're adding in a couple star signs. And it's the combination of the Great Mother and the Father, right? That coming together of Virgo and Scorpio to produce that phonic image again, that reassembles.
It just seems so. It seems so important and so upfront. And most of the things in these occult studies, when you pull them back, they might seem random on the top, but there's techniques underneath.
Oh, there's so much going on, because we know this for sure. And I'm sure that there's something about the counting, because I'll remind everyone, on the first episode you were on before Neil was, we showed that quote from Iamblichus, who says that the chakra-teres contain the totality of ritual and the total power of theurgy, and that just by looking upon the symbols, you don't have to say anything or do anything. You're doing the whole rite. How is that possible? There's something that's going on with the mental mind that can read these symbols, that reenacts the theurgic ritual in the mind. And there are many levels to unpack for sure.
There's certainly a masculine feminine thing going on there with the circles and the lines.
Absolutely.
And then, as you said, it seems like Greek words, not quite, with a bit of Hebrew in there sometimes. I've seen a few shins, the letter SH.
And a few hieroglyphics, but mostly Greek and Latin.
Yeah, and then like star signs, Pleiades or whatever, just fudged in there. There's surely something behind it. Like I told, when I'd first studied all this stuff years back, I came to the same conclusion you did, that it's a jumble really, but there's just something making me reserve slightly, because usually when you study these things for long enough, something does pop out. So I agree, but with a reservation.
It's a form of sigilization. You're taking a word, you're taking a phrase, and you're occulting it through the magical rite. And there's something about that occultation and drawing the sigil, because half the time these don't repeat. What's interesting about the one that we are focused on in that phylactery is it repeats. But most of the time, you do not see these, even if you see the same sigils, they're never in the same pattern. because people
Yeah,
are
there's no real
playing around.
syntax.
And when I was looking at Dr. Skinner has a whole PhD thesis on this, and Skinner's amazing occultist, and he goes into it, and they're looking at all of the most common symbols, and he's like, it's very clear, like they're just kind of like what we do in sigil magic. You take the letter A, you turn it on its side, you draw a little squiggly, and you make it look unique. Now it's this otherized image, but it's still the letter A, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's complicated and wild. All right, but okay, let's go back. What do you want to say, Dion, about your presentation? Any final words on the hair? What do we need to know about this magic hair?
It's your sixth sense. In some cases, you know, it's an antenna. But more, I'd like to get back to the dragon's tongue and just leave you with this. Not what the dragon's tongue was in ancient times, but what it would mean for you in your life, how you could actually use it. What benefit can you get out of this? Well, that would be you harnessing the power of your words, that they would take effect in your reality and change your reality. You know, there's people that speak things into existence through their words. So to me, that's the dragon's tongue, is you harnessing the power of your speech to communicate to the universe and your friends and family and others what you would like to happen in life.
Well, it's this again, isn't it? It's that good speech symbol. And I just said abracadabra, which means, shall it be so I speak.
Right.
So, yeah.
Wow.
But what is a word? What is a word?
And again,
why do you have to spell words? Why do you do it in cursive? Why is the syntax to it? You know, it's what is a word?
That's why they made it a god.
Yep, that's why it's Hermes, right?
Yeah.
And you know, it also takes me back to what you were talking about with that actor there, Heath Ledger. You know, we see similar stuff with other figures who engage in this kind of transformative magic. Another clear example is Jimi Hendrix. Deanna and I, we've been meaning to do an episode on him because we've ranted about it a dozen times. But look at the lyrics to that song, "Wind Cries Mary."
Definitely possessed.
Voodoo Child.
He's definitely possessed.
This is a guy who knew and purposely burned himself out so that he could ascend like a star to the sky to transform reality. And he freaking did it.
Yep.
But at great cost, right? Wild stuff.
I got one more thing. My last thing to say. I want to show you something real quick from Sophocles. Sophocles talks about the dragon here, believe it or not. He mentions the dragon. He says, "You who have many names, pride of the Cadmean bride, child of Zeus, the loud thunderer," who's Dionysus, by the way. "You who rule famous Italy and lord in the hollows of Demeter of Eleusis." People would think Dionysus didn't have anything to do with Eleusinian mystery. They're crazy because he says it right here. "Lord in the hollows of Demeter of Eleusis, open to all, Bacchic god, who live in the mother city of the Bacchants, Thebes, by the watery flow of Ismenus, near the seed of the savage dragon." Isn't that crazy? And then it says down here, "Upon you the looks of the fiery flame of pitch beyond the rock with double peak. Walk the Corsian Bacchic nymphs, the Castilian spring, and the ivy-covered slopes of the hills of Nisa, and the green coast with many grapes send you here, while your voices divine cry, Ewo, as you visit the streets of Thebes." Imagine watching that in a play, like in a theater. Wow. Imagine watching a chorus performance in a theater. And he says, "The seed of the savage dragon." Remember, he's born from the dragon and Persephone. It says it right there.
Right. And the dragon is that Zeus. You know, it's that ruler. And again, right, the most glorious is also the greatest evil. And this is part of the great mystery too. We have to slay the tyrant, right? Part of the thing is that Zeus will turn tyrannical and that he must be brought down by his children, by Athena. This is why he consumes Metis in the first place. He never sets out to create a divine child. He sets out to try and stop his children from displacing him, just like what happened to his father, Kronos, who was dethroned by his children because he refused to change, to die and be reborn. He didn't want to go through that process. And we're seeing the same thing with this Zeus. And what does Zeus do? He's consuming all his children. It's that Christian God. It's that Abrahamic monotheism, that scientific monism that reduces everything to one and wipes out the image again.
Which is the
To
opposite of
survive.
Pan, who is the all.
Yeah. Who is the all, right?
And then they
then the
use
devil,
that. They
isn't it?
use that image for the devil. They do.
Yeah.
Right? But also, who is Pan? The attendant of Dionysus, right? The attendant of Dionysus.
That's amazing.
All right, guys.
Well said. I got to go.
Yeah, I think we should end it. So, peace and love, everyone. And thank you guys for joining us. We will be back next week, right, with another episode of Dragon Tongue where we'll be going east. And hopefully, we'll see Ryan and Gnostic then.
All right.
All right, everyone. Take care. We're out.
Be good. Hold on.